That's all right. Nobody will get us.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Christensen.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Amon. Nelson.
Here.
Meske.
Here.
Plowman.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Fagerly.
Here. 8
present, 1 absent.
Okay, we'll go first off to the Rice Memorial Hospital budget. If you'd like to present your budget.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. You should have a copy of the materials that we had sent out. First of all, what I'd like to, and they're up on the overhead, it is there too. First of all, what I want to do is I want to share with you our process, which is really the same as it has been for years. But what we do is we do our internal work with our department directors and with our then with our administrative team. And then we present it up to our finance committee, which is held the second Thursday every month. So the second Thursday in November, we had our review with the finance committee, which then recommended approval to our full board. And that occurred last Wednesday night at our board meeting, that the forecast was formally approved to move forward. Tonight, what we want to do is share with you about the forecast. And so you can see here, there are let me make sure I have the right number. There are 12 pages of documents. The first page is a narrative from Mike and myself to all of you about our forecast. Then we get into a couple, 3 pages of financial statements and key indicators, and then we get into a few of the graphs. And what we'd like to do is briefly go through that with you and kind of give you the highlights of where we are projected to end 2015, and then where we're looking at for next year. We are projecting 2015 to end up at an operating margin of 3.8% for all of our entities. You can see in the memo of each of them at the hospital, the care center, and home medical. We're projecting our excess margin to be at 4.8%. And then we're projecting a couple of ratios that we track very closely at the hospital. Our debt to capitalization ratio, which is projected to be at 43%, and then our days of cash, which is projected to be at 131 days. The relevance there is we benchmark ourselves against hospitals across the country, similar in size to Rice Memorial. Our goal is that we want to be at the benchmark or at the median or slightly improved from that. We set targets each year based on that in order to try, if we're below the target, in order to try to achieve what the target is for median hospitals, like I said, similar to us. So next year, we have projected ourselves to end up the year at a 3.4% operating margin. What we're projecting is that our inpatient activity is going to be flat again compared to what it is this year. We expect our outpatient activity to increase a little bit. More and more work is being done on the outpatient side. But what's interesting to note is we are not projecting any new net revenue next year. And we are not expecting that the government payers from Medicare, Medicaid, they're not going to pay us any more money next year. And so what does that mean when we look at salary increases and other types of increases? We just have to hold the line, and we have to keep our expenses flat. So a good question was asked the other night is, well, Bill, I mean, what gives you the idea that we're going to be able to do that? And the point is, if you look at the numbers here, our expenses are flat in 2015 compared to 2014. We know we can do it, and we're going to have to just keep doing it each and every year because, as I said, nobody's going to be paying us any more money. No matter how much harder we work, we're going to be still getting paid the same amount of money. And so our expense control is going to be critical for us next year. We'll talk about some of the volume indicators. They're a little easier to read when we get into the graphs, and so we'll talk about that as well in a couple seconds. One of the things that we're doing and we're working extremely hard on is our routine capital expenditures. That's one of the things that we have the most, probably one of the most control on our expenditures is what do we continue to invest in new equipment, replacement equipment, and what can we defer, what can we repair, and try to push that out further. We continue to be very aggressive in our management of our capital expenditures and really in the management of our balance sheet in order to hit our targets of debt to capitalization or how much debt we have, hit our targets of days of cash as well. We are projecting next year that even with the $4+ million of capital expenditures, all of that will be paid for by cash generated by the operation. We are not looking at borrowing any money next year for our capital expenditures, nor do we borrow any money for the rehab building that's currently underway. What I'd like to turn your attention to, I'm not going to review these in any detail. I just want to share them with you, what each of the pages are. So on page 2 is a consolidated balance sheet. It's very small numbers. I realize that. What this does, though, is we project our balance sheet, what it's going to look like next year, and then from there we calculate what our ratios are to try to understand, are we managing our balance sheet appropriately and aggressively in terms of what our cash is going to be, what our receivables are going to be, how much debt we're going to have on the books compared to our equity, and so forth and so on. So that is what the purpose of the balance sheet is. Of course, if when we're done with this, if you want to go back to ask questions about any of these statements, we will certainly be able to answer them for you. On pages 3 and 4, we show our income statements. One of the things that we've done, we did a couple years ago, is we started projecting everything on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, then we update our projections for the next 4 to 6 quarters. On page 3, you see what our quarterly numbers look like for each of the entities and the consolidated roll-up. We believe that updating what our projections are every 3 months gives us a much stronger handle of what we see is coming forward to us and how do we adjust to it. One of the things that the board holds us accountable for is managing to our ratios. And so if we look at our margin ratios, if we look at our balance sheet ratios, the board holds us accountable to hit those targets. And so that means that we have to continually adjust our projections. We have to continually adjust what our actual performance is going forward, meaning in order we may have to, if our volumes are pretty flat or if they're declining, we have to adjust expenses in order to keep hitting our margins. So the board holds us accountable and making sure that we're adjusting on a very timely basis, which has led us to let's work on updating these numbers every quarter. So that's what's found on page 3 and 4. One note I want to make is on the bottom of page 4. You will notice that there's 2 income statements for home medical. The thing that's different about them is the bottom one is done on a cost of goods sold format, which is more relevant to a retail business such as home medical. And then the section right above it is converted to a hospital format so we can roll it up into a consolidated format. Page 5 is our cash flow statement, including our capital expenditures. Next year, we are projecting to spend a little over $4 million in routine capital expenditures. That would be diagnostic equipment, therapy equipment. There would be any kind of facility renovations, if we have to move a wall, if we have to put in any kind of new floor covering, wall covering, all sorts of routine type capital items. We're projecting that to be about $4 million next year. And then you'll also see the rehab project. This document puts the rehab project in there because it helps us understand our cash flow and when we need to draw out of our reserves based on what we look for our outflows to be. Then on page 5 is the key drivers for us. These are the key performance indicators that I mentioned a few minutes ago about what our board holds us accountable for. These are the main drivers that we look at. We look at on line 7, or row 7 is the operating margin. We are projected that next year we're going to be at 3.4%. Our excess margin, we're projected to be at 4.1%. Our debt to capitalization, or the amount of debt we have compared to what our equity is 40%, which is found on line 14. And then our other driver is line 16, our days of cash, that we're projecting to be 141 days of cash. On the far right side of that worksheet there are the benchmarks that I was talking about a couple minutes ago. These are updated annually. These are the targets that we look at in order to try to achieve and what we strive for, and trying to hit these numbers in order to keep a sound financial operation. The next couple pages are graphs. We have our operating ratios, which is found on page 7. These show what our operating margin is, our excess margin, and our EBITDA operating margin. These are all relevant ratios in the hospital industry that we look at. We have the solid line is always the benchmark, and the line that moves up and down are what our actual performance is, as well as what we're projecting our performance to be next year. On page 8, our financial debt ratios, we have a couple different ones here. We have our debt to capitalization ratio, and then we have our cash to debt ratio. One thing I want to point out is that the Rice board has put in a ceiling, or a debt to cap, a ceiling of 45%, meaning that they expect that we will manage the operation, that we will never hit or go above that level. And so if we want to do new initiatives, if we're looking at making some changes, we have to be able to manage within that self-imposed target. And that's provided us a lot of what I would say work that we have to develop in order to fund some of our initiatives, such as the rehab building. So what we've had to do is we've had to scale that back into an affordable level, which is very good, in order to keep hitting what our targets are. On page 9, then we get into our cash and AR, or accounts receivable ratios. What we want to be looking at is on the top line, that our cash, that line keeps going up, and then our receivable, that line keeps going down. And that's what our target is, and that's what we're held accountable to. Pages 10, 11, and 12 are our volume indicators, and this really shows where we're looking at for next year. On page 10, the number I want to draw you to, are they color?
They're not color on their iPads, but they are color on the screen.
Okay, let's go up to the screen. That the orange line up there represents average daily census. So that's the number of inpatients that we have in the house on average on any given day. And you can see that this only goes back to 2012. If you would have gone back 8-10 years ago, that number is around 50. Right now, we're projecting to be about 31. We're not anticipating any significant changes in that. It's one of those things that if we see some changes in it, we'll, in essence, count it when it happens. Meaning we don't want to project that, oh, magically we're going to go to a 35 average daily census and our numbers are going to be looking all rosy. We're projecting forward what's actually been happening. And that's one of the changes that we did, significant changes in our methodology when we went to this approach of let's project based on what's actually occurred. And we believe it's a much sounder approach for us. On page 11, then we have our surgical services. Each of these are based on quarterly numbers. The top orange line is what the total of our inpatient and outpatient number is. We're projecting right around 800 and some surgeries per quarter, which would equate to about 3,400 procedures in a given year. That number is up from where it was a couple years ago, back in 14, and some of 13. But you can see it's not nearly where it was back in 2012. We hope that with some positive success in our recruitment efforts, that those surgical numbers will grow back up to somewhere in that 2012 range. And then in our last page is page 12, the emergency services. The very top line is the number to be looking at. We have about 3,500 visits a quarter, or right around 1,200 visits a month. Why is the emergency room so important? It ends up to be a driver, a statistical indicator, a driver of projected volumes that we're going to see. If we see this line moving significantly, it tells us information about if it's moving up, we can expect that the demand for services are continuing to grow. If we see it moving down, demand of services are likely to be softer. So it gives us indicators of what we can expect going forward. That is the 2016 forecast for Rice. And with that, Mike and I would entertain any questions.
Councilmember Anderson, do you want to take over the meeting at this point for these questions?
Okay, I sure will. We asked if there were any questions. I had a question. You converted, was it like 4 beds to inpatient mental health? Do those show up in the inpatient numbers?
Yes, they do.
Okay,
they
so-
show up, inpatient mental health shows up in the average daily census number.
Okay.
Because those are what's considered acute days versus observation days. Now, I know that's a little technical, but acute days is something that we measure because reimbursement is so driven based on, is it an acute admission or is it a patient just there for observing? The 4 beds we added will likely push up this 31 average daily census to 32, maybe 33, provided that we have the psychiatric services to care for all those patients.
Okay, all right. You answered my questions. Anyone else have any questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your report. The average daily census is not necessarily overnight stays, correct?
Correct.
That's inpatient, which is people that come there during the day for whatever and then leave.
Yeah, it's measured in terms of their acute admissions, so they meet certain criteria, which affects our payment, and then those that just stay overnight for observation, those are really considered an outpatient service.
Okay.
So those people that are there for observation are not counted in the graph.
Okay, but this would include the emergency room
Yeah,
services?
exactly.
Okay.
Someone may stay in the ER for 14 hours for observing, and then it might be determined, they go home or something has changed and then they need to be admitted.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill, what I was curious about was on these patient days and the drop we've seen from 2012, how is that affected by the number of major surgeries that take place at the hospital?
Well, it's affected in a couple of ways. One of them is that a lot of these major surgeries are moving to an outpatient category. The payers, usually led by Medicare, are saying that is now an outpatient procedure. You are not allowed to admit them into the hospital. If they need to stay for another day or so, it's an observation patient, but they're not an admitted patient. So that's that continually has a push on us downward in terms of what our acute average daily census is.
What would the, like a lot of your orthopedic procedures, like knees and hips and stuff, what would they be classified as?
Well, a lot of them used to be classified as an inpatient acute care, but now more of them are getting moved to the outpatient setting. And so we're seeing more and more of that work of it must be done as an outpatient, and that's all we're going to pay you for.
Okay, and is there an average number of days that they stay in the hospital before they go to like recovery at the Rice Care Center?
Typically, that's a 3-day stay.
Okay.
And if you've heard in the news they talk about that 3-day stay for nursing home eligibility. That's typically what they're staying, because Medicare has a guideline that if you want to be covered under the Medicare benefit in a nursing home, you must have a qualifying 3-day stay at a hospital.
And I realize, the changes that have taken place. I mean, I for one had a hernia operation when I was 13 years old in an Air Force hospital in Illinois. They kept me for 5 or 6 days, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And I was up running around
Right.
the next, or within a few hours of having that surgery, and I had a hernia repair done here in Wilmer at the surgery center when I was 62. They sent me home about an hour or two after I woke up.
Yeah, exactly.
mean,
Yep,
big change.
Exactly, and that's big changes. Yep.
But I was wondering, with a lot of like these orthopedic procedures, we're not getting a lot of those in our hospital. And we used to, I know, because when I first came back to Wilmer, I think we had like 4 orthopedic surgeons in
Right.
town.
Right. We used to, and that's another driver of what's going on, is that we don't have the complement of orthopedic surgeons that we used to have. That work is being done on that, and Mike, I'd entertain if you want to add any more to it. But we have orthopedic surgeons signed and ready to be delivered next year, and hopefully then the following year, to bring that complement back up, which will definitely help this number, because not all orthopedic care is going to be done in an outpatient setting.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Okay, we have 2 actions to take on this, and I think the procedure would be, Mr. Mayor, the first one, we'll approve the budget, and then we're going to have to talk about the intertransfer agreement. But I think the way that we should do this, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion, someone seconds it, and then you call the question and all that sort of thing, okay? So I'll move approval of the Rice Hospital 2016 budget.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the 2016 budget as presented. Additional questions? All in favor of the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. It does pass. Next would be the intergovernmental transfer agreement. Steve?
Mr. Mayor, maybe Bill wants to talk about that a little bit, but we've had some conversations. Rice Hospital, from my understanding, is still waiting for, or has waited for some information as it relates to Rice Care Center. The agreement, as you have in your packet, is just an extension of the present agreement for the next 3 years. When that information is available and analyzed by Rice, they would then come back to the Finance Committee and discuss any kind of adjustments that may need to happen. The agreement, as it is written, is 0.8% of the hospital's retained earnings. It's in a little over $500,000, as explained in your committee action form, and some of that is due to reimbursements and stuff for Rice Care Center, so that may change slightly up or down. Bill, I don't know if you have some additional comments.
Well, the only additional comment, and that would have there's no negative effect to the city on that.
Yeah, those are pass-through dollars as I understand them.
Yep.
Is there a motion for the same?
I would introduce I think that's a resolution,
Yeah, yes, sir.
approving the intergovernmental transfer agreement with Rice Hospital.
Second.
A resolution has been introduced and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? I'm sorry, roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Thank you, Rice, for your good work that you do in our community, keeping us all safe. And it's good news, I think, on the rehab project, so keep on going. So thanks for all you do. We even got you out of here a little bit early. Next, we'll have municipal utilities.
Good evening.
As far as the agenda for our presentation tonight, we're going to review some of the operating and expenses and revenues for the three divisions, electric, water, and heating. And then we'll also go through a combined WMU. A couple changes that we've made this year is that in addition to looking at a budget for next year, we're looking at a 5-year operating plan. That will give us a little bit more of an idea of the trending that we're seeing in the business, but also give us an early warning system for any kind of rate adjustments that we might be looking for. In addition, on the capital plan, we've moved from a 5-year view to a 10-year view, again, to give us more visibility on some of the projects, especially some of the long-term projects that we're going to be taking on in the next several years. In 2016, we have some very modest projections for sales in our three divisions. In the electric division, residential is fairly flat, and we're going back to a 5-year average in order to normalize the weather impacts. Weather impacts that residential sector very, very much. We'll then grow at about 0.5% a year, which is slightly above where we've been historically. We've been averaging about 0.3%, but we're expecting to see some growth there. In the commercial and industrial segment, we're looking at a 1% increase in kilowatt-hour sales over where we expect to be at the end of this year, and again, to have some level of 0.5% growth per year. I think the key thing is that we're not looking for a rate adjustment in 2016 in the electric business or in the water business. In the water business, we're looking at flat load growth, which is in line with the 2015 projected levels. In our heating division, we're looking at about a 1.1% lower unit sales in 2016, and that is primarily competitive pressure. We're continuing to lose customers in this division, and we forecast that out as well. We're looking at a 1% decline on an annual basis going forward. We are currently doing a strategic review of this business to see how we can affect it going forward and what will be the impact on the utility. By way of proportions, we have $32.6 million budgeted for next year for revenues. The electric division is approximately 90% of that. The heating division is about 3%, or just under $900,000 of revenues. Some of the more operating expense assumptions in the production, which is the power plant, 19 employees, basically the same level as held constant over the last several years. A 3% labor increase across on an annual basis. We are looking at a kind of a no change in operating procedures for this business going forward, and as a result, we're going to slightly increase fuel consumption next year, and we'll also continue the self-maintenance on the wind turbines. This is another part of our business where we're continuing to evaluate it from a strategic standpoint. The facility is getting on in years, and it's more and more difficult to repair and maintain it, and the efficiency is not there anymore. We need to be looking at how we'll be replacing it as we go forward. The purchase power segment of our business, which is, if you combined purchase power, production, and transmission, that's 75% of our expenses right there. Purchase power is very significant for us, about 50% of total expenses, and we have a huge transformation occurring in 2016 with a brand new contract with Great River Energy, as well as a change in how we're positioning ourselves to take advantage of the low prices in the market. In addition, we continue to have increases in the transmission expenses for the business. January 1st of 2016, we will become a full transmission owner in MISO, which means we get to sit at the table with everybody else to plan and take part in the discussions about what the future of the transmission grid will be in Minnesota. We continue to be short from an investment standpoint, so that's something we're continuing to look at as well. Just a couple quick comments. Distribution is basically forecast to be in a normal situation ongoing. The only comment I'll make is on the streetlight maintenance. We are instituting a program that will have the same level of normal maintenance, but when we replace a bulb, we're going to be replacing it with an LED now going forward. So we're starting that LED program. Customer service is an area where there has been a lot of work done in 2015. We've restaffed customer service. We've restaffed our energy services area. We'll be working on the second year of our automated meter reading change-out program, where we're basically changing out 8,000 meters in the city of Willmar to give ourselves a radio-controlled meter reading situation. Next year, we have some dollars in the budget for our anniversary. We'll be 125 years old next year. And we've not changed any allocations as far as customer service to water and heating divisions. And that's also true with our general administrative. No real surprises on any of those kind of financial assumptions. The 2016 electric revenues budget is $29.1 million, which is up from about 27.7 from our projection in 2015, about a 5% increase, very modest unit sales growth, and again, no rate adjustments, but we will enjoy the benefit of a full year of that rate adjustment because it happened in mid-year. Total expenses for our electric division will be $25.8 million, and this will be a 7.7% reduction from where we expect to be in 2015. As you can see here, the production, the purchase power, and the transmission represent 75% of our total budget. The big change is going to be in our purchase power section, $11.2 million. We have about a $4 million decrease in that as a result of the new GRE contract, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Whoops. As we look at the sources of where we're going to get our power for next year, Great River Energy is the first two columns. Western Area Power Administration is the Department of Energy. That's our hydro that we buy. WPPI is Wisconsin Public Power. That's the Point Beach nuclear facility that we purchase from. MISO is the market. And then the generation way off on the right is our own internal generation, both the coal gas plant as well as our wind. We can see two big shifts, and the big reduction in the Great River Energy contract because we basically took it down by a third. We went from 30 megawatts to 20 megawatts, and we had substantially decreased the amount of the fixed portion of that. Previously, we were paying $4.3 million a year, just a fixed charge. And under the new contract, that's less than $200,000. So there's a big change in that one. And the other big change for us is the exposure to the market. And while it's a big change for us, we've gone from being a seller to being a buyer. The market is the lowest cost energy that we can find today. So if we can modestly increase our risk by being exposed to the market, we can enjoy lower prices. So we're going to take that and put it into our portfolio for next year. These are some of the statistics for that purchase power portfolio. I won't spend a lot of time here, but you can see the spread of megawatt hours, the percentage of energy, where we're getting it from, and then the total cost. And the cost per megawatt hour there is both the capacity and the fixed cost portion of it. And you can see that the GRE and the WAPA are fairly low cost purchases of energy, but the market is at $25, is even lower. The nuclear contract with Wisconsin Public Power, $60. And then the highest cost source of our energy today is the generation that we have right across the street. And it's a significant contributor to our total cost. And that's why we're doing that strategic analysis. We have to look at that plant, producing only 5 megawatts is inefficient and producing that high-cost power. This is not in your packet, but I did it only to emphasize the change between the 2015 and 2016. and that's the reduction from the $14.4 million to the $11.2 million. A very significant change in our purchase power portfolio. As a result, we're looking for an operating income of $3.4 million next year, and our target is to stay in that $3 to $4 million range, and that's what we would be looking for as far as falling out of that range from a rate adjustment standpoint. So you can see that over the next several years, we're right at the bottom of that range, so we'll be taking a look at that closely. But again, we don't see any need for a rate adjustment in 2016. Our water division is about 8% of our total revenues. Total revenues are about $2.6 million. This is up slightly from 2015, and we have no growth in this division, but we have the impact of a full year of the rate adjustment that occurred earlier this year. Operating expenses in this division are flat at $1.9 million, so we will see no increase in operating expenses in the water division. And looking at operating income and net income, enjoying about a $600,000 to $700,000 is kind of where we'd like to keep that. And again, that's kind of the target range that we would see and where we would start seeing the red flags being waved from a rate adjustment standpoint. Moving into our heating division, 3% of our total revenues. We're looking at $844,000 revenues next year, down from about $885,000 in 2015. Again, we're going to be seeing a decline in units sold. We're not forecasting any rate increase here. We've not had a rate increase in this division since 2008, and that's primarily because we're uncompetitive with natural gas. So that's something we will continue to evaluate. The number of customers continues to decline. We've lost customers again this year as well. Operating expenses, $956,000, just slightly under $1 million. You can see that purchase power is the majority of those, and that's basically a transfer price from the electric side of our business. Operating and net income, we're forecasting it to be negative across the planning horizon, and obviously we know that that's not sustainable. That's not something we want to have happen, and that's the reason we're taking a look at this from a strategic standpoint, how we operate in that business. So total revenues, go that way. My big fingers here. There we go. Total revenues for WMU next year, $32.6 million, up from about $31 million for our reforecast, about a 5% increase, and that's roughly just some small unit sales increases, as well as the full year of rate impacts in both the electric and the water division. And split residential, commercial, industrial, about a third, roughly, across the business. Operating expenses will be $28.6 million, which is down about 6% from 2015, so about a $2 million decline in total expenses. Production, purchase power, transmission, even on a total budget basis, total company basis, are about 71% of our total costs. So looking at operating and net income for the total combined Wilmer municipal utilities, $4 million for 2016, and about $3.5 million to $4.5 million is kind of the target that we would look at for being sustainable in that business. And this is my favorite slide. It shows the capital plan over the 10 years. We split capital down into 3 different priorities, and it's must kind of capital spending, should kind of capital spending, and then we can, if we can, kind of capital spending. So this is only these are all the projects, but we'll only fund priority 1 and 2. Starting at the bottom here, this lighter blue is the power production, and this spending in here is related to the diesel generator relocation project, where we have 12 megawatts of diesel generators, and this is to put them in more permanent facilities and to get them ready to operate under the new EPA rules. This spending out here is essentially a placeholder. We know that over the course of our planning horizon, we're going to be looking at a repowering scenario for the facility across the street. So we'll be looking at different technologies and different investment strategies. And this is probably one of the lower cost strategies that we're showing here. The orange bar here is our electric transmission, and it's being affected by a number of transmission projects. Early on in the 2016, 2017 timeframe is the completion of our new Priam substation down in Priam. We're still working on that with GRE to get it going, but we're forecasting that we'll be having approximately $2 million of spending next year. As we move into 19 and 2020, that's some transformer replacements at some of our substations. Some of them are getting well past their useful life, and we need to maintain that efficiency and reliability. And then as we get out into the out years here, this is essentially a placeholder for some revenue neutral transmission investments. We know that we need to invest in transmission. It's the only hedge we have against those continuing transmission cost increases. So we'll be looking for a different type of transmission investments that we can take advantage of. The gray bar here is our electric distribution business, and that's pretty steady Eddie. It just keeps going on. We'll continue underground replacement, continue expansion, both commercial and residential. The yellow bar is our water and heating division, and we have 2 major water plant life extension projects over the course of the planning horizon. One that kind of peaks in the 17 to 19 range, and then one out in the 23 to 25 range, both very significant replacements. The dark blue bar at the top here, the early years here, this is the second year of the AMR, or automated meter reading rollout, where we'll be replacing another 4,000 meters. And this is the placeholder for our office and service center replacement as we look at taking a look at a new office facility going forward. Included in your packet are the detailed income statements as well as the detailed capital projects listings, but I won't go through those. So if there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Councilmember Anderson.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you for the report. A lot of information there, and pictures are always good. Anyone have questions? Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Someone had asked me, and I didn't know, and then I looked at my bill, but they had on their bill administration fee for the sewer plant. And I said, well, that's the cities, so they do the billing for us, so I could see a fee there. But then there was another admin charge for electric and water. And I said, I have no idea why they would charge that.
I'm not the billing expert.
With the electric bills, we,
Hey, move it over so we can hear you.
okay.
There you go.
Yes, when we had our new billing system come out in May, we were able to put a whole lot more line items and a lot more detail on the bills as they came through. And we were able to separate out the different pieces of the wastewater bill, which had the administration, as well as the more detail on the electric bill. Again, those numbers were not created overnight. Those numbers were all rolled into the rates previously, but with our postcard bill, there just wasn't the room to print that out. And so they are in there as a separate line item, so we have more visibility and more transparency.
Because they told me that's like going to the store, and they charge you for adding up the total.
Oh, the billing charge is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. The billing charge is basically a misnomer. I wish we had changed that name to something like infrastructure charge, because that's what it is. It is what it costs to bring the wires, the equipment, and maintain everything to that meter, and not just how much it costs to put a stamp on a bill. That's a bit more accurate.
All right, that explains it then.
And
Thank you.
the line items there, are right out of the ordinance. So that's something that will, as we go forward, now that we have this new billing, we'll clean up the ordinance to make it a little bit more descriptive. And if that person wants to give me a call personally, I'll answer their questions on that.
I'll let them know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that the highest cost of our power is self-generated. Does that include the windmills? Or is it just across the street, as you mentioned?
Well, the generation is rolled in there, but our wind turbines, because of the cost structure that we have today where we're paying down the debt, that is some high-cost power for us as well.
So that's driving that high cost, basically.
Yeah, and fortunately or unfortunately, the proportion of wind is so small in our portfolio that it doesn't affect the overall cost that much, but it does. It does.
Drives it up.
It does drive it up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. Tim, I was wondering about the carbon emission reduction standards that are being, increased, if you will, or raised. They're raising the bar there, and I'm wondering how that's affecting some of our future plans and some of your cost projections.
Well, the Clean Power Plan is no doubt's going to have some significant changes in the MISO market. We'll see a lot of retirement of coal facilities. We'll see a movement toward natural gas supplies or natural gas projects. And natural gas right now is the marginal cost, is the marginal producer in the market, but it'll become even more so. So as a country, the Clean Power Plan is forcing us to be more dependent upon whether it's natural gas or nuclear or renewable, but away from fossil fuel type facilities.
Yeah, I understand that. And right now, I think, don't we get our primary fuel source is coal?
For the local generation.
Right.
One of the things that we did with the Great River Energy contract, the old contract was specifically out of two plants. They're two Coal Creek facilities. Now we have what is called a slice of the system. So, we're basically taking a replication of everything that Great River Energy does. So we get our energy is considered to be part coal, part gas, part renewable, based on what their system is.
So, I would assume then we get a break because we're rolled into a bigger operation.
Well, I don't know about a break, but
Well, I'm just, because I'm kind of wondering, how these switches are going to affect us when we switch to more natural gas use. And I don't know when, I guess one of my questions would be, when is that going to, how often does that happen and how, and what are we looking at before you'll be maybe operating where that's your primary fuel?
happy to answer that unless you want.
Well, go ahead, you've got this, you've got the floor.
We, as we look at our planning going forward, we'll be looking at natural gas because that's really going to be the only option that we have. There is, we will continue to look at renewable projects. We'll continue to look for hydro projects, but our choices are being limited, and we will see. We talked about the capacity payments that we saw and we're going to enjoy over the next 10 years from Great River Energy are very low today. And that's only because there's a lot of uncertainty as to what the future of the units of generation will be in the MISO market. And as that changes, those capacity rates are going to be increasing. And it's going to be a test for us to have our own self-generation and look at what that's going to be vis-a-vis buying it in the market. So we're probably going to be a lot more better off owning our own generation and having that capacity payment or that capacity in-house rather than being subjected to the market for it.
And what's our capacity now for generation of power based on what the usage of the city requires?
We have more than sufficient. We're probably 70 megawatts is probably our capacity sitting there today. Our peak is in the 65 range.
And that meets all of our needs, or how much power do we have to buy?
We buy power. Our forecast for next year, there's a difference between capacity and energy, for instance. Capacity is having the ability to generate. Energy is actually what's going to be flowing. We will be buying about 9% of our needs next year out of the market.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we've got two actions here as well, and I'll introduce a motion to approve the Winmer Municipal Utilities 2016 budget.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the budget for 2016 for the municipal utilities. Discussion. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, you mentioned water and electric are going to be relatively flat. Do you consider in your revenue all the high-efficiency energy tools that are available, including LED lighting, that's going to affect immensely the revenue side of this? I know I asked it, I think last year, the year before also. Are you seeing that effect, and do you account for that somewhere?
As a matter of fact, we have seen that effect, and because of the Conservation Improvement Program mandates that the state of Minnesota has required since early 2000, is that we've instituted those type of efficiencies, and you will see on a regular basis that we provide rebates for saving energy. We have requirements to save up to 1.5% of our revenue in kilowatt hour sales every year for efficiency, and it is showing up. We had a very effective conservation individual, Mr. Upsall, that did a fine job, and a lot of our customers are getting on board. There's still quite a few retrofits left to do, and so our customers are going to be much more efficient with their electric usage, and that does have a big impact on our projection as a flat kilowatt hour sales.
That has to affect, I mean, it actually drives the cost up because the cost of maintaining stays pretty much the same.
Actually, those costs go up with inflation, but yes, you're right. They do not go away, and we do have to replace underground. We do have to provide for other capital improvements, so we just have to be more efficient with those costs that we do have. As our customers become more efficient with electricity, it's up to us to be more efficient with the delivery of that electricity.
Thank you.
Ready for the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The motion does carry. Councilmember Anderson.
We'll go to the intergovernmental transfer agreement now, and if Mr. Okins would explain where we are on that.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Anderson, city staff has met with the municipal utilities on a revision to the intergovernmental transfer that's been in place for many years. Like the hospital, it used to be based on a percentage of their net worth. It was looked on as a return on investment. The utilities requested in the beginning of the process to have it changed more to industry standards, and so that it could be compared to more of the industry, since there's a lot of private utilities out there. The agreement, again, is an extension for a 3-year period. There are safeguards on both sides. The utilities has a 2% increase cap, and the city's safeguard is that there's a floor so that it would not be reduced any lower than what it was the previous year. The calculations are primarily the difference that was changed. Instead of a percentage on the retained earnings, it's based on the kilowatt, a 5-year average of kilowatts sold. This agreement, like the hospitals, is always subject to renegotiation, and they would come back to the Finance Committee with that. Wes, if you've got any additional comments or highlights that I missed.
You covered pretty well, Mr. Okins. In what we have or projecting forward, relative to our kilowatt hour sales is because it's tied to the kilowatt hour sales, the payment in lieu of taxes is projected to be relatively flat.
Councilman Anderson, Mayor Kelvin, I did forget to mention that this will generate a little over $2.1 million for the city in 2016.
Okay, and I'd just like to add that the mayor and I were also involved in those discussions with the utilities. We did that last spring, so we've had this one done for a while. Are there any other questions on the, Mr. Mayor?
I believe it's megawatt hours according to the contract instead of kilowatt hours.
That's just a couple zeros, yes, sir.
Anything else?
Those in roll call, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a second, Mr. Mayor.
Wasn't a motion or so.
Was there even a first?
Mr. Anderson made the first.
I'll second it.
Resolution has been introduced and seconded. Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The resolution passes. Thank you for your good work, and thank you for all you do keeping our power on. I like that. What is it, 5 zeros or 5 nines? 5 nines. Yeah, we're working on 5 nines. That's right. Okay. Trying to learn the lingo. So, okay, next we have our community partners. And what we will be doing is we'll be starting with West Central Industries, then we'll be going to Vision 2040, then the downtown development, and then Wilmerfest. Will be the order that we will go. So, Renee, if you want to come forward for your report. For your information, the council does have in front of them a 5-year history of your requests, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Anderson.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi. Well, thank you for letting me come, and thank you for letting me come earlier. I'm the acting clerk of New London Spicer School Board, which started 10 minutes ago. But I'm here today to represent West Central Industries. I've had the pleasure and honor to come back last January as their executive director. Cindy Cameron is the food service manager, and she is back there, who is with me tonight. And she is also newer in her role as she began that role last January. We're here today for our request this coming year of $20,575 to help support the Meals on Wheels program in Wilmer. Some of you may know that I started my career in Wilmer working for Wilmer Meals on Wheels, and I was there for 18 years. And I was blessed in 2007 to go work for Lutheran Social Services with the Senior Nutrition Program. Since then, the Meals on Wheels program has been a stable entity. They have continued to serve people within your community, kept them safe in their homes and independent longer, and have avoided some nursing home care or other services that might be needed, just based by having a nutritious meal delivered to their home daily. This meal that they get contains 1/3 of the RDA for persons over the age of 60. That's the recommended dietary allowances. In that meal, we also provide the milk. Everything is complete with that. We have been doing this service for over 40 years in Wilmer, and we've been grateful for the partnership that the city has had with it. We've also gotten some United Way dollars. And so this year, our request is very similar to last year's. It's $775 more than we received. We received $19,200 this past year. And what are we using it for is to help supplement. Our meals cost about $6.98 to produce, and we charge $5.87. Now, if you're a good business person, you know that's not smart math, but we're required not to charge more than county-assisted people are given. So people are on a waiver. We have a small portion, I shouldn't say a small, but half of our people are on a waiver with the county, and they are subsidized, and they get $5.87 for every meal served. There's no way to recoup the difference, and we're required to charge private pay the same amount. So $5.87 is a flat line across the board. If you are someone who is in an age group getting Meals on Wheels, you're on fixed income. These are folks that a lot of their options for other nutritional opportunities aren't there. They're in their home, and they're homebound. The money that we get from the city helps cover the cost of the meal and what we charge folks. But in this upcoming year, we've had a lot of challenges. For one of them, if you're familiar with minimum wage increase, part of our increase to the city this year was reflected on that when we did the math. We've also experienced new things that are coming down the hatch. This young lady over here works more than 40 hours a week. With new exempt laws coming, we have to manage that as tight as possible. If you're not familiar with that, exempt laws are going to change in 2016, where to be exempt, you need to be $50,400, and she is far from that. Other things that we face is equipment. We have aging equipment. Just this year, our budget up year-to-date is $1,000. We've spent over $3,300 on equipment repairs and maintenance. As far as the other questions that you have for me regarding our program and our meals?
I have a question, and we'll open it up to the council. The number of meals that you're serving, is that staying constant or going up, or what's it doing?
It's stable. January through October of last year, 2014, we served 15,639 meals. To date, January through October of 2015, 15,610, a difference of 29 meals in that time period. You know, we work with folks that today they might be with us, they might go to nursing home care, they might be back on their own. We might just be a service to get them through a broken hip. Or else, as you know, some people pass away on our program, but it's always someone else new is coming on. And we do know that our aging population will only increase. So that's a factor.
Okay, one other question, and then I'll turn it over. Are all the meals delivered by volunteers, or do you have some paid staff that does any of that?
It's actually changed. One of the things that we've come to our aware, we work with 13 area churches, and over time, our volunteers are aging also. We're trying to encourage and how you can be a voice for us and get younger folks to deliver, but our staff are delivering probably 3 days a week. I know we had Saturday service, and on Cindy's day off, she'd come up and deliver because she couldn't get enough volunteers. And it's not just one route, it's 2 routes just to help us get there. So this is great to have a public forum to say we need more Meals on Wheels drivers.
And we'll emphasize that. We need more volunteer drivers.
Yes.
Anyone else on the council have a question? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What number can they call if they want to volunteer to drive?
Wonderful. It's 235-5310.
5310.
Yes.
5310, okay.
Yes.
Okay, we've got another item that we're going to talk about with you in just a minute.
Okay.
But for now, I'll introduce is this a motion or a resolution? For the funding?
Resolution, right?
We've done.
What?
We should probably do resolution.
Yeah, okay, I'll introduce a resolution to fund West Central Industries in the amount of $20,575.
Second.
A motion has been introduced and seconded to fund West Central Industries in the amount of $20,575 for the year 2016. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank
The
you.
resolution does pass. Councilmember Anderson.
And we have one other thing that, for some unknown reason,
Yes.
you didn't get the amount of money that we had said we were going to give you in, was it 13 or was it 14?
You know, looking back in our history, a request was written, but I don't think a letter was written to request the funds to be distributed. That was a time of an interim director, and we also had a different food service director at that time. So unfortunately, Cindy and I don't have the history behind that, but in the records, we can find a request, but not a letter to release it.
Okay, and we agreed to do that. I think this is something we'll bring back to the Finance Committee, and we'll get it resolved and get the money to you, because we said we were going to give it to you, but since we didn't get a letter requesting it, it didn't go out. So we'll get that little kerfluffle handled.
Okay.
Okay. I just want to thank you for the good work that you do. All of your volunteers and your staff out there just do a wonderful job for our community, not only in the Meals on Wheels program, but also your other programs out there at West Central Industries. So thanks for all you do. I know that there's been some difficult weeks that you've had recently. And as the mayor of Wilmer, I just want to tell you that I really think you guys do a great job and commend your staff for the good work they do, because they employ people that otherwise wouldn't be able to work. So thank you for your good work.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Anderson,
Who, I didn't write down. Who did you say was next?
Vision 2040.
Okay, we'll call on Vision 24. We have Mr. Tone. Welcome. Afternoon, evening, whatever.
You're retired, it probably is morning.
That's getting late for me. Actually, I'm here on behalf of 2040. Just as a quick summary, you remember that 2040 is kind of an outcropping of 2020. 2020 originally was involving with the city, the chamber, the county, the school district, trying to put a plan together strategically for the next 20 years. Time being what it is, now we're 15 years into that plan, and so about 2 years ago, 2040 was erected as a way to look strategically at how to benefit the community and the people living here, and taking into account the changes that have happened over the last 15 years as well. And I know your time is short, so I won't go into all the details, but I will tell you that a lot of you participated in the original evaluations that were done by the consultants and looking at, what is important to people in our community. And as that grew and took shape, it came down to 4 primary goals that 2040 then decided to look at. And they were how to attract and retain businesses to the Willmar area, how to strengthen the region's economic diversity, how to develop and enable more things to do, and developing next generation leaders. And through the course of that process, we've now developed a 5th goal over the last 2 years, which is the health and wellness of our community. And while I won't go into all the details, we have 33 programs that 2040 has started in these 4 different areas. Some of them are ongoing, some of them are one-time deals. Dog Park is a good example. I know the city's been largely the lead on that program, but we did get involved in that to help them kind of nurture that through the process. And the whole idea of 2040 isn't to control it or to own it, but to create an emphasis to get it started. And if we can hand that off to other folks, that's just great with us. But the idea is to put some kind of context around the planning itself. So if I look at goal number 1, which is to attract and retrain people, you may recall that we did the brain gain for rural Minnesota. That was done earlier this year in August. We had 30 to 49 people that participated in that. We had the cross-cultural conversation. We had 175 people get involved in that. We had the Lunch and Learn project with the Somalian population. It was a noon presentation to anyone that was interested in terms of the school district and employment opportunities. We had about 50 people at that one. And then we did the Green Card Voices. And if any of you happen to see that was here in town back in the summer. It was stories about people coming here, why they came here, how hard it is for them to make the adjustment, but the things that we can do to make them feel more comfortable in our community. And that was a very good success. We had about 50 people that attended that the evening. We had even more so later as the display was up. We also we did an inventory to connect new people to the area. That's something that we're spending a lot of time with. One of the things that we came across with a consultant is that the millennials are different than those of us with gray hair. We came because there were jobs. The millennials come because they want to live here, and then they look for the job that allows them to do that. And so we've had to look at how can we connect with these people and bring them in and be part of our organization or our communities as we go forward. And then there was Hack 2.0, which is an opportunity for people to tap into the electronics out here, and broadband development's an important part of that. And that's something that we're also helping to support. We may not necessarily own it or take the lead in it, but we want to foster it. And then Wi-Fi hotspots is another program that they developed or they were working with to try to develop areas of the city where people can connect Wi-Fi without necessarily having to be in their home. And some of that can be done like in the library, but a lot of it's being done in the school districts. Economic diversity was goal number 2. And that is where we focus, or they're focusing on how to attract and retain businesses. That's going to be important going forward, and this is where we're hitting a lot of the millennials in particular. Entrepreneurship, but also we spent a lot of time talking about how does this change the dynamics in terms of recruiting people, not only the people, but the businesses as well. And then I think one of the things that group did that was probably the most fun for the folks that participated was they did make a trip up to West Fargo, and they did an inner city leadership program up there. And what was interesting about it was that Fargo was looked at as the hub, but Moorhead and West Fargo and some of the other communities around it benefit if Fargo does well. And that's something that came back loud and clear from the people that went. And we're seeing that within 2040. Spicer, New London, Pennock all have seen that if Willmar does well, they also do well because the area does well. And so they're supporting 2040 to participate in that as well. Things to do is a group that's a little bit in transition right now because of a leadership change, but basically it's community citizens trying to figure out how can we bring other activities back to Willmar so that we have things to do outside of employment. And if you remember from 2020, the Dorothy Olson Aquatic Center and the YMCA was a direct result of those kind of meetings that we had in 2020. I happen to work on the Generation Next Leaders, which is Goal 4. And so I know the most about that. But I will tell you that I've been really impressed with it. We spent a lot of time trying to get young people to take these leadership roles, not only in terms of business, but also in terms of nonprofits. And so we spent a lot of time doing that. The We Lead program is one that we set up or helped set up with women only to help them develop a networking and a mentorship program to help foster entrepreneurship and leadership goals. We had about 900 people participate in their 8 events over the last 9 months. And then the second one that we did is through the University of Minnesota Extension program, which is the leadership program. We get about 30 people to go, I believe it's 8 or 9 sessions, to talk about how to get engaged, how to be a leader, how to get involved with leadership in the communities. And we're finding that we're able to fill each one of those programs. We've done 2 so far. We're in the middle of the second one. But we're finding that we're able to fill those positions, and it's an excellent program that's supported or basically run by the University of Minnesota Extension Office. I'm also the chair of the Willmar Area Community Foundation. We are supporting this financially, and one of the things that we do is provide scholarships through 2040 to people that want to be in that program but don't have the financial resources to pay for it. So, and then lastly, the fifth one, which just started about a month ago, is to look at how can we make our communities more healthy, both in terms of exercise, diet, but also in terms of safety and in terms of access to people to support them. And that's a program that we're now talking with Blue Cross Blue Shield to see if we can tap into their resources to help us support that. They've done other pilot projects throughout the state. This is an opportunity for us to raise the bar for our communities itself. So, having said all that, what we are requesting, we have been a partner with the city in the past. You did fund us for 2013 and 14 to the tune of $5,000. I believe you had questions about the program for 2015, and so I'm here to answer any questions, to give you an update of where we're at on 2040, to request the financial contribution for 2015, and to put it on the budget for 16.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you registered with the Secretary of State at all, 2040?
I don't believe so.
Are you a nonprofit then? Probably not. Where do you receive your other funding? I know that the EDC has given you some funds.
Yeah, I can tell you here. So for 2014, or I can give you 15 here. Jennie-O Turkey Store, Willmar Public Schools, Candioi County and Willmar Economic Development, Willmar Area Chamber, Willmar Municipal Utilities, Spicer EDA, New London School Districts, Community Christian Schools, and the City of Pennock.
So then you've received money from the EDC and from the municipal utilities, of which come from basically taxpayers in the city limits of Willmar. So now you're wanting Willmar to add more to that. Do you think that's fair? That,
Well,
that,
I mean,
that the 2040 is not just going to the city, but to the other city entities like the EDC and the, what was the other one?
the utilities?
Utilities, yeah. I mean, we taxpayers and the residents of Willmar pay money to both of those entities in the form of fees, and as far as the EDC is concerned, they get some taxes from us. I don't like the fact that you're getting all this money from all these. It's all coming from Willmar taxpayers in 3 different places, and I personally don't like that. And then the fact that you're not registered with the Secretary of State. It's like you're a group that takes this money, and this is taxpayer money we're talking about now when it comes from the city, and spends it as you see fit. And we're supposed to have a public purpose, an exact purpose for that money, wherever we give it. And if, from what I understand, legally, we can be held accountable, even individually, if we just flat out give money away to some an organization or a group that's isn't, that is spending the money the way they think it should be spent and not the way the city thinks it should be spent. We don't have a specific purpose for it, in other words. Or did you? I mean, is there some specific purpose this $5,000 go to, or does it go to 2040 and then 2040 says, well, where should we spend this money?
Well, 2040 is made up of about 20 people on the steering committee, county people, city people. The idea is how can we benefit the community? So I would argue that Wilmer is the largest benefactor, bringing people in, creating opportunity to keep people here, retaining the business interests, inciting people to come here. I mean, those are the kind of things that we look to do. There's no one single project that anybody drives. I mean, basically the projects are designed as how can we fulfill that role. If that role can be taken over by somebody else, we'll get it started. I happen to be on the foundation, as I mentioned. We're looking at it from the standpoint of if we didn't provide this for these folks, would it get done? And yeah, we may be getting money from 3 different municipal entities, but the idea is the total is what we work with. But I think it does benefit the community, the school districts, and everybody else to try to maintain a strategic plan, which worked very well for 15 years, but now we're getting to the last 3 or 4 years of that plan.
You have to understand that the 2040 is a group of unelected people, the 20 board members, as you say, spending taxpayer dollars. When we talk about public purpose, from the League of Minnesota Cities, it says that we need, if it's a public purpose spending, it needs to be spent on the city of Wilmer, and that within the county. And this is a county-wide project, 2040 is. The 20 members are from all over the county, not just the city of Wilmer.
How is that different from 2020?
2020 was pretty much the same as 2040. Yeah.
Which was started by the city, the county, and the school districts.
I don't know if the city started it. It was a group of individuals within the county, just like this board is of 20 individuals. But I just don't think it's proper to call this public purpose spending when we give you the money and then you decide where it goes. Maybe our city attorney could even answer that question. Is it? Am I all wet on that, or doesn't that public purpose mean it has to be spent for the city? That's what the League of Minnesota Cities says.
Mayor, Councilmember Christensen, I did not specifically review the League of Minnesota's League of Cities materials before this meeting. My understanding, though, is you have wide discretion as elected officials to determine if an organization is serving the public interest. Your elected officials, that's your role, is to determine what that public interest is. Certainly, you are not required to approve a funding request, but I don't believe that it's legally prohibited.
Okay.
How about the fact that we don't know where the money's going to be spent? I mean, there needs, as far as I'm concerned, there needs to be a specific purpose for it on the city. I mean, if we spend it on something in Pennock or Candy, Ohio, or New London, that isn't public purpose for the city taxpayers of Wilmer. It's their money we're talking about, and I've brought up many times that it's really easy to spend other people's money. Really easy to do. I'm in contracting business. I build houses and I spend other people's money, but I'm very careful on what it's spent on, and we need to be aware of where our dollars are going, and I don't know where they're going specifically.
Well, we have plenty of positions on the steering committee if you'd like to participate.
You know how many hours I've spent with the city council in the last 6-8 months?
That's by choice.
Okay. Yeah.
My point is that it's a strategic plan. Wilmer is the focus, and everybody benefits. Now, there has been nothing that went to Pennock as an example, but they do it because they know if Wilmer does well, Pennock will benefit from it. In fact, almost everything in this list, which we'll be glad to give to you, is designed to attract, maintain, provide leadership in Wilmer.
I understand that, but again, I'll just bring back the point that it's a group of unelected people spending taxpayers' dollars. You know.
Mr. Mayor, you had a...
First off, Terry, thank you for being here. Your presentation was very well done. I am a wholehearted supporter of Vision 2040. If we take a look at the amount of money that's been invested by our local businesses in this project $5,000 pales in comparison. The businesses of our community see the value of this process of having a clear vision on where our community is going to go and what projects we need to be involved in. I spent 3 hours today, and I know others in this room spent much more than that, at the Blue Cross Blue Shield meeting today. We had people from, I believe, probably 7 or 8 different counties that were coming to see what we're doing with Vision 2040 and with the health initiative that Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to be investing in our community. You hit it right on the head when you said they're looking at healthy ways that we can make our community better. What we heard on the opening comments of this, and this speaks to public purpose, what they talked about in the opening comments is the healthcare costs and how the healthcare costs are directly related to income, housing, availability to work, those types of things. If you take a look at all of the items that are involved in Vision 2040, they all are things that bring value to our community. Our neighboring cities are willing to partner with us on this project because, as you said, what's good for Willmar is good for this county. What's good for Willmar is good for Pennock, is good for Candio High, is good for Atwater, Blumkest, Priam, Raymond. They all see the value in it. I fail to see why the council does not see value in this project. And this is my personal opinion that Vision 2040 adds a lot. I know I spoke to some leadership graduates last year out at the Minnewas campus. They spoke nothing but high regards into this process. Again, another open meeting that anybody could have attended. They could have heard firsthand the leadership potential that is being driven and built. You talked about the We Lead piece. Those events have been open. They've been in the paper. They've been advertised. They've come across us on our invites on things that we can attend. If we don't know what's going on with Vision 2040 or we don't see the value, the website is out there. It's very clear what the community vision is for Vision 2040. And the $5,000 that's being requested for 2015 and 16 pales in comparison to the local investment and the return on that investment. And I think that any way we can hedge our funds, we should be doing as a council.
Anyone else? Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Anderson. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, giving grants of money to appointed bodies that aren't elected. I mean, I think the people elect the members of this council to make those decisions on how their tax dollars are spent. If I vote to give them to somebody else, which I've done, but I'm getting more uncomfortable with that. I'm not real. The things that I read and hear, like about the Met Council down in the metro area in the Twin Cities, they're not elected. They're appointed, political appointees, but they control a lot of tax policy and they control the disbursement of tax dollars. I'm real uncomfortable with that. That's what the people, I guess, voted for council members, and that's why we vote for people in the legislature. And a lot of the things that you're doing, I don't question that there are some benefits, and I think that community activities like that are great, but I don't know that it's necessary that we support it with tax dollars. I think our constituents, if they want to support that, they belong to numerous organizations that really do a lot of those same things. The Chamber, for instance, has a lot of the interests that are on the 2040 goal with respect to businesses and opportunities, all those things. We also have the EDC that we give a lot of money to, and the county also supports. So I mean, I just, like I say, I don't question the motivation of everybody involved and the goals that they have, but I do question giving money to people because I don't know if I really don't know how it's going to be spent. And just saying something's for a public purpose, I don't know if that really, I don't know if it's sufficient, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. I just want you to know that. So,
Councilmember Christensen, then Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we have a policy on when we're giving funds out, and maybe this question be directed at Mr. Okens, and that would be Did we receive the required documents that our policy says from this 2040 entity?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Christensen, Council, this item has, staff was somewhat directed to go back and look at the historical aspects of this, as well as the 2020 and the All-American City program that was done in 2005. In researching all this, and this was done at the September 28th Finance meeting, where the mayor had asked that the dollars be designated for the Vision 2040 marketing and website improvements. There was discussion about that, as well as the health initiative. In researching this, we found that in 2012, when representatives of the 2020 committee came and gave a report to the council and the finance committee, that at that time they also had requested funding for 2040. At that time, there was nothing budgeted for 2040, and so $2,500 was paid out of the 2012 budget, out of professional services, mayor and council. $2,500 was paid out of the 13 budget, professional services, mayor and council. In 2014, for some reason, Mayor Yanish and Administrator Stevens budgeted for it under civic promotions, which then requires, based on council action, the policy to ask for additional information. If that's the right category or not, that's up to mayor and council to decide. It certainly can be classified either one. The one requires more information according to the policy that's been in place for a number of years. The council adopted that policy due to a number of requests coming from different organizations. So, the information that was provided in your packet and is on the screen is what was provided. I believe the administrator's office sent out requests for items that were in civic promotions for 2014.
I notice that we've received tax returns from the other three entities we're dealing with here today. Since these aren't registered with the Secretary of State, there is no tax returns. We don't know if they're, while they're under the United Way. But don't we require that under that policy of, you said it was civic promotions? That isn't that in the policy that we receive a tax return?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Christensen, the policy as far as donations or contributions to outside organization does require a number of items. One is it a profit, nonprofit organization, balance sheets, current budgets, what the funds are being proposed for, and if it's a nonprofit, a 990 form, which is an IRS form required for nonprofit organizations, which spells out their financials.
And we have not received that, correct? From 2040.
We would not receive anything if they are not a nonprofit organization, Councilman Christensen.
Okay. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, a question kind of regarding what we're talking about right now in terms of the formal establishment of 2040 and maybe going forward, if this is something that's in question. Are there steps that are being planned or could be taken to maybe more formalize as a nonprofit? Has that been discussed? Where does that currently stand?
I think they originally took it off of 2020. Like I say, it was county, city, school district, and it did well for about 10, 12 years. Kind of subsided for a while. Now we got 5 years left. Do we need to meet again? Took the structure and just moved it forward. We've got, as far as we've got people from the city, from the county on the steering committee. We haven't looked at going nonprofit. It was designed more to provide strategic planning and actually, the businesses and the community foundation have supported most of it.
And I guess to follow that up, I can sort of empathize with the concerns that are out there. It logically makes sense. That is the money that we're spending, which is not our money, it's taxpayer dollars. Where is that going, and what's its purpose, and how is that going to be used to benefit our community? I think that's a perfectly fair question to ask. I guess what alleviates concerns for me is simply transparency. If we have the documentation and we have transparency in everything that's in the amounts being requested, and in everything that's being done and the projects that are taking place, if it's all right there and can be seen, that takes care of my fears and my concerns. And I guess I can maybe leave it at that.
There's a final report in the balance sheet will be out probably by the 1st of December.
Thanks.
Councilmember Mischke?
Well, first of all, thank you for all the work that you're doing on 2040. I think Wilmer is clearly benefiting from 2040. I'm looking at the list of activities, and I've actually participated in several of them, and a lot of them are distinctly Wilmer activities. They have numbers on them. The investment of $5,000, we've totally gotten that back. Now, those might not be $5,000 worth of investments this council would have made, but they are being made, and I think that there are perhaps ideas that we need a group like 2040 to generate, because a council might not be able to generate those. So I am, for one, am appreciative of the activities that have been done. The questions about financing are valid, and those need to be addressed. But as far as the validity of the activities 2040, I think they have been very good. I think they have actually had a benefit to Wilmer directly, and a $5,000 investment to put skin in the game for this community, especially as it's seen as a hub, is a small price to pay.
I got a comment, and then Councilmember Nelson. I, too, have seen a lot of value from Vision 2040. And the interesting thing, I read it just this weekend, we're not unique in doing a 2040, a 2020. I saw something that was happening in Austin, and it caught my eye because that's where I was born and raised. They've got a Vision 2040 that's doing something very similar. And I saw one from another community, I can't remember where it was, a few weeks ago. So it's not unique. It's not something that we've dreamt up here, and we're the only ones in the whole state doing it. To the point about appointed bodies spending taxpayer dollars, I think probably all of the groups that come before us today will be appointed bodies spending taxpayer dollars. So I don't think that this is unique either. I am sensing that there's a bit of a lack of information being transmitted, whether it's financial reports or whether it's updates. And I guess I would suggest that two things probably. Maybe we should have every 6 months have somebody from Vision 2040 come and give us an update. I know it's been offered, but for some reason we haven't gotten it on our agenda. I think that might help people understand a little bit better what all's going on. The other thing I would say is there are still opportunities for all of us to be involved and get involved with Vision 2040. I'm on 2 committees, and some of the others on the council are also on committees. And it really is community-driven. So I would request that somehow we work on some financial information and maybe in something more than annually, and then we'll take it upon ourselves to invite someone from 2040 to come and give us some updates. Councilmember Nelson.
I'm struggling with the right words to, I think, say. I am concerned about the message we are sending to this area. I think Wilmer has an opportunity here to lead and to contribute to a group that's made up of volunteers who want to help move this community forward and bring new and both economic and leadership and the people who live in our community to help what we want this community to be in 2040. I believe I asked the question 2 months ago. I received a phone call from Mr. Okins today. How did we fund 2020? Why is it different now? How can we find a way to participate in this financially to help contribute to what a lot of other communities and organizations are doing to help enhance this community? And I believe Mr. Okins said to me on the phone today that he sees that this meets the public purpose, that maybe we can't fit it into this category, but to have a conversation about not funding something that is affecting a lot of different organizations, a lot of different businesses. Rice Hospital sat here a little bit ago and told us how critical it is to do recruitment. The same thing I'm sure ACMC has experienced. as other businesses experience, people who come to town that want to build homes. There's a housing task force working on making housing better. I guess my question is, how do we find a way to do this instead of talking about how we cannot do it? The money, the contribution that the city of Wilmer would make to this is minimal compared to what this community is reaping benefits. And I am asking this council to take a look. If we can't fund it through the structure that came here, then let's find a way to commit to doing this and find a way to fund this. I would ask Mr. Okens to clarify. He wasn't able to share how 2020 was funded. I believe he does have information. I think United Way, the structure that, if I understand correctly, United Way has agreed to be the fiscal host for this, puts a lot of credibility into how things are being done. If we need additional documentation, we should have asked for it. I don't know what we're asking for with that. And so I am hopeful and that this is a very positive, energetic thing going on in our community, and I would ask this council to support it by finding a way to fund the $5,000 for this year and to put it in the budget for $5,000 next year.
Okay, I'd like to wrap this up. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe it was put in the wrong category. 'Cause I remember way back when where we'd have 5 to 10 groups coming in asking for money. We went to a policy, and some are have a strong feeling we got to follow that policy. Now, former mayors had a slush fund, and they would pay out of that fund. Mr. Mayor, do you have a slush fund? Are you willing to pay $5,000 out of it so then the council doesn't have to vote on it?
The mayor does not have a slush fund. Every dollar is properly accounted for. Right, Mr. Okens?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I
have
believe
$1,500, I think,
Councilman Fagerly is talking about the mayor's contingency fund, which is allowed by the city charter, and I believe that amount is at $1,500.
Okay. Councilmember Christensen, and then I think we need to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not insinuating by any means that 24 isn't doing something good for the city, the community, the county. I think we all here can agree that they are. There's no doubt about it. And you see it in the paper, you see what they're doing. I mean, they had their list of items on here. However, funding for that, $5,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money in our budget. However, you tell that to most of the retired people that live in my ward. And then to know that they're getting our taxpayer dollars from the EDC and from fees from the utilities, isn't that enough? Are you going to the hospital too to get money?
The hospital's asked. I don't believe that they've responded.
Okay. But I'm just questioning the funding coming from the city. And I think it's a valid question. They need money, and they're doing great things. I don't question that at all. It's just this funding mechanism I don't agree with. Since they've already gotten some, the county, the city have already given through the EDC, and then the county gave again. Now, that's my taxpayer dollars, too, and all the people in my ward.
The only thing I would say to you is that if strategic planning is important to this community, there are people stepping up to do that. They're expecting the city to do the same thing.
I understand, but I'm elected to do what I think is best for the people in our ward and our city in general. But I've said enough. But okay. You guys are doing a good job. There's no doubt. I mean, and we can all agree on that.
I want to be clear where we are here now. There's 2 requests. There's funding for 15 and 16. If we want to do that, can that be in one, or does that need to be in 2 different requests or different motions? Because I'm going to make a motion. I'm asking either Steve or one.
One request.
Kevin is saying one. I'm going to introduce a resolution authorizing payment to Vision 2040 in the amount of $5,000 for 2015 and $5,000 in the 2016 budget.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded for $5,000 for 2015 funding and 2016 funding. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would point out to the chair that, and And we do get some very specific information from some of the people that are asking for money from us. And it's quite specific what they use the money for. It's not general, and on some of these, but not all of them do that. And this would fall into that category where it's not real specific. I don't even know what their annual budget or income is looking at the information they gave us. I have no idea. So I have no idea what their need is. That's another thing that we require to be shown here, and that's my only concern. And it's not about the work you do. I don't have any quarrel with that. But I also know that you get a lot of private contributions, and I would assume maybe there are some others out there. I know it's just gotten to be a little too easy to come into City Hall here and ask for money for a lot of things that we get hit up for.
If it helps, we have a report that comes out. It'll itemize every dollar.
Yeah.
It'll tell you exactly where it's going.
I think you directed that to me, if I may respond, just, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Anderson.
I think, I asked that they look at getting some way to get that information to us in some amount of detail. I can understand what Councilmember Johnson is saying, so I am hopeful that we will get some detailed financial information moving forward.
Roll call.
Councilmember Meske.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
No.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
No.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
5 ayes, 2 nays.
Resolution passes. Next, we'll have a presentation. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for the good work you're doing. Next, we'll have a presentation on the update of the historic 313 building. Councilmember Anderson.
Welcome, John. We'll hear about that, and then also your funding request for 2016. Please, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm John Christensen with Christensen & Associates, the accounting firm next door, and we are also neighbors to the city buildings in the downtown here. I am here with the downtown development, Willmar Downtown Development, and to talk about actually 3 agenda items, and two of those items have nothing to do with the funding request. And so those should be easy. It's information only, and what I'm wanting to do this evening is to actually provide information related to a project that the Willmar Downtown Development is embarked in, which is known as the Historic 313 on 4th Street LLC. That's an LLC that the Willmar Downtown Development, which is the former Willmar Design Center, has now been transitioned into the Willmar Downtown Development. And the reason for that is that the Willmar Design Center was not a 501c3, but was a 501c6. And so during 2015, it transitioned the business to a 501c3 entity for filing with the IRS. So it is a 501c3 entity, and focused on the downtown renewal of downtown Willmar. And so what I would like to do is to explain this evening is the development of the historic 313 building, which is Foxhole Brewery, the hub, you maybe heard of a lot of other things that are happening at that facility, and how that joint venture came to be and the status of that, and so that everybody understands the layout, the project, and where it is at this point in time. I do have a PowerPoint here that I'll be presenting. When I give you an update on the 313 building, then I have Emily Northey, who is from the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota and out of St. Paul, and she will who is our partner, the Willmar Downtown Development's partner in the historic 313 building. And she will give you a brief synopsis of what the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota is and the purpose of the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota out of St. Paul, and for any questions that anybody may have related to that. And then the third part is does come to a funding request, and it's requesting the City Council to consider funding the Wilmer Downtown Development as part of its operating budget. And that's the information that was provided to the council previously in the budget request. So to begin with, the historic 313 building, and if you go to the, is next to the barn, is the leading the project is, it's a partnership with the Wilmer Downtown Development and also the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota. And when the Wilmer Downtown Developed looked at the idea of trying to preserve this building and create economic development downtown, it was looking how can you essentially create something from nothing, because that's really where we were at some point in time. And I'm going to go through kind of the financing project of this, of how this project came to be. And I'm an accountant, and if I was in private business, this is not how you'd want to go about funding a project, as far as it was not necessarily the way that you would want to fund a project, but it was really required as to the board had to look at this project and had to decide, do we want to make this happen? Can we make this project happen? And we believe that this can take place. And so there were some steps that were essentially out of place as far as how we needed to go forward with it. And when I say that, it's as far as getting all the funding, and we had to believe that we could raise the money, get the grants, get the other funding that come into place. So Preservation Alliance is our partner in this project. And if we go to the next slide, and they're the ones that actually, the Preservation Alliance was the ones that started to make this happen. And they came up with the initial $65,000 to purchase this building from the Barn Theater. And the Barn Theater, the alternative of this was that the building was going to be demolished and it was going to be made into parking lot. And so the $65,000 came from the Preservation of Alliance, and pardon me, but if you can go back one slide, I'd appreciate that. When the project was put together, they put the $65,000 in, initial purchase of the barn, and we formed the historic 313 on 4th Street LLC. Okay? The Wilmer Downtown Development is a 49% owner. The Preservation Alliance of Minnesota is a 51% owner. The idea is that neither one of these organizations has a mission to be a owner of real estate and amass assets. The purpose of this is for economic development, to get something started, to get the impetus, the stimulus in the community started, and then to, at some point, get this sold. And so the structure is put together so that at some point, if this entity gets sold, or the building gets sold, the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota will get paid back their $65,000, but at this point, they were the first ones to come in and put money at risk. So the next slide, please, is actually the floor plan of the building. And if everyone's familiar with the building, it's right next to the Barn Theater. On the bottom of the bottom portion of the diagram, that's where the Foxhole Brewery is, and that's operating now. And if you haven't been there, you have to go, because it turned out very nice. It's a real nice asset for downtown Wilmer. And then the balance of it is additional seating with 4 other tenants that would take place. And that's the design and the plan, which would be eating places, and then also will host the hub, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And so the front part of it is going to be common eating, and the city participated in the approval for allowing outside seating on the street, which is something that is anticipated for the future as well. If you go to the next slide. The potential of 175 patrons, historic value. We're looking at creating jobs, creating businesses, hoping that there's going to be five new businesses that would participate in this project. So how did we come to the funding on this? Can I move the slides forward here with this? Okay.
Other way.
Thank you. So to start this project out, we had grant funding, and we had grants that the organization, essentially the Wilmer Downtown Development, was able to acquire through partnerships, and working together with a lot of organizations that really wanted to see this happen. And part of this is that this project is going to take place in 2 phases. The first phase is to get the building restored, constructed, and so that we can get the leases into the facility. And so there'll be 4 leases that will be in the building paying rent to help make this project sustainable. The second phase of the project is really called the Hub Project, and I'll describe that in a little bit. That actually gets a little bit more complex, but that's really a second phase that's going to be part of this, and that really encompasses the whole county and the whole region as far as being beneficial. So you can see about $138,000 of grant funding that has been received. Some local businesses and that have been very generous in terms of coming forth and wanting to see this project move forward. Stakeholders and contributions in kind. Wilmer Downtown Development has raised about $37,000. Again, that's from private individuals that have donated to the downtown development. That's part of their fundraising that they've used. You can see the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota has put in the $65,000, others, and it's about $147,000. Now, this is also in-kind contributions as well. So it's not, this part is not all in cash. The top 2 are in cash. And this is the financing structure at the current time related to the project. There's the HRA relendable funds at 0% interest for 10 years, $12,000. North American Bank went in conjunction with the Southwest Initiative Foundation for a joint financing of $84,000. The Mid-Minnesota Development Corporation has a $100,000 loan, Candia County EDC for $50,000 loan. The City of Wilmer Utilities assessment is financed, and that was appreciate the financing assistance from the council on the utilities that are being assessed. So this is the structure as far as the financing that's associated with the building. This financing has not all been utilized just because the construction is still in process, but this will get the project through the phase 1 completion, where the building has been restored. The building is now in usable space for tenants to come in on the second part of the building. The hub, the phase 2 hub portion, would still yet need to be financed and developed. The idea there being getting a self-standing, self-sustaining business in itself with the phase 1, and then the hub can come as a phase 2. Looking at this project, looking at monthly debt service at $2,700, looking at monthly projected lease revenue from tenants of about $3,200. There's obviously expenses that are figured in there, but there's also another space with the commercial kitchen that will be additional rent. But again, that's projected at that point in time. So it will handle itself once the facility is leased out. There's good momentum on the interest in the building. There is a lease for I guess there's a lease for one of the businesses that's in place, and there's several others that are letters of intent and an interest together that are looking at coming in. So the very positive about the prospects of it being leased out. So these are again 5 new businesses that would come into play. The food hub is the phase 2 portion of it that would be part of this project. And just a couple comments on the food hub. That is the concept of regional farmers and growers collaborating to market and distribute food together. This facility would allow further processing of some of that food, and so to allow locally grown foods to come and be processed and distributed locally and utilized locally. With that, it expands a local market with local growers, and we've had the ability of now there's some growers that are taking place right now. Currently, there are 3 greenhouses that are part of the initial project. One that's located on the Midwest Technology Campus, and 2 at the Willmar Area Food Shelf to utilize the greenhouses and provide some of the food year-round. Midwest has been a partner in this project. They were very much in favor of the project and partnered with us on this, and very generous to give a 10-year lease on the greenhouse that's out there with no charge, and also 6 acres of land that have been tilled and have been used for growing local vegetables and crops. And so there's local growers that are using that, and including the Dream Academy and the Prairie Lakes Detention Center, where the kids are out there working in those food plots and growing foods, and also in the greenhouses. So it's a real beneficial structure out there, especially with for a learning process with the kids. And as you said, the Midwest Technology Campus has just been has been an excellent partner and very supportive of the project. I will ask for questions related to this, but what I could maybe do is that maybe might answer some of the questions. If I could ask Emily Northey to come up and just explain a little bit about the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota, because that might answer some of your questions that you may have, and then we'll certainly ask questions related to this project.
Okay.
Emily?
Welcome, Emily.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin, councilmen, members. Let's see. All right. My name is Emily Northey. I'm the Minnesota Main Street Coordinator. I work at the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota in St. Paul. The Preservation Alliance of Minnesota works statewide, as our name suggests. I did grow up in Duluth and feel like I live in St. Paul now, but I didn't grow up there, for whatever that's worth. Anyway, so the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota's mission is to lead and inspire people to connect to historic places, promoting community vitality. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a board of directors, an executive committee. Our executive director is answerable to the board of directors. We also have 4 program areas of preservation support services. I'm down, okay. Preservation support services, real estate, Cornerstone Academy, which is our education program, and our real estate program, which is the program which works most closely with the project that John outlined earlier. The Preservation Alliance of Minnesota as a nonprofit, is funded from a variety of sources. We receive funding from donations, corporate sponsorships, foundation grants, government grants, and a variety of contract services or fee-for-service or earned income, as the phrase is known in the nonprofit world. For us, that looks like contract services, training registrations, memberships. We are sometimes partners in historic tax credit rehab projects on buildings, as well as event tickets if someone attends our fundraising gala, for instance. Minnesota Main Street is a program of the Preservation Alliance of Minnesota. As I mentioned, we are funded, that particular program is funded in part with funds provided by the state of Minnesota through the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, through the Minnesota Historical Society, also known as the Legacy Amendment. With those dollars, we are very careful and well reported. We are recognized as well by the National Trust Main Street Center as a coordinating program in Minnesota, which Minnesota was not recognized as such until 2010 when the program restarted. We work with very closely with 7 communities in Minnesota that are designated Main Street programs, including Willmar Downtown Development, previously the Willmar Design Center. These communities report reinvestment statistics to us on a quarterly basis about what is happening within their Main Street district. Since 2014, that has represented 257 additional, that's net gain, full-time jobs, 70 additional businesses, 40 part-time jobs, and 24 businesses expanding within their districts. This is amongst the 7 communities. In 2014, for every dollar spent running a local Main Street program, $17 was reinvested within that Main Street district, and of those, $13.79 were private funds. Main Street programs are based on 8 guiding principles that help shape their work, including making incremental progress, being comprehensive in the downtown revitalization process, doing projects and projecting an image of high quality, partnering, as I think this presentation as well as the request that will be made before you represents. We recognize, and the local Main Street programs recognize, that the downtown revitalization work that is being undertaken is not something that the private sector alone could do, or else they would have done it. And it is not something that the public sector or local government could do on its own, or they would have done it. The public-private partnership is necessary because it is more than either side is able to do all on their own. I won't read the entire list. Willmar Downtown Development is the first program within Minnesota to meet national accreditation standards. These are best practices recognized nationally by the industry in running an effective, long-term, sustainable downtown revitalization program that is steeped in economic development and historic preservation. Willmar Downtown Development has met each of these, it's not going, okay, there we go. Is met each of these 10 criteria, each of those 3 years for which they were accredited, in order to maintain that status. This status and meeting those criteria is reviewed on an annual basis through a combination of self-evaluation, supporting documentation, and a site visit conducted by Minnesota Main Street and steering committee members or past steering committee members. As such, it is then reviewed by the National Main Street Center for final decision making. So, Willmar Downtown Development and Historic 313. The Preservation Alliance of Minnesota, when we started our real estate program, we had received a grant from a private foundation for a sum of money to start up a revolving loan fund, which is what was used to purchase Historic 313 for $65,000. And we could have used that money in other communities. We could have split it up amongst a number of communities. We could have done a number of different things with it besides purchase the barn shed building. We chose to partner with Willmar Downtown Development in purchasing that particular building because we had a pre-existing relationship with Willmar Downtown Development and had a more thorough understanding of your local market, of the downtown property market, of Willmar's position within the greater region, and of the local capacity of Willmar Downtown Development to undertake such a complex project successfully. And with that, I would also like to leave this slide up here as I note that Willmar Downtown Development, as compared to the other Main Street programs, is perhaps more mature developmentally as an organization. They look forward strategically to understand not just what will be a fantastic event or a fun building in which to meet and have an additional 5 new businesses, or how to react to the current crisis of the day. Willmar Downtown Development really looks at what can be done in order to dramatically shift the market position of downtown Willmar to be in a better position in 5 years, in 10 years, next year, than it was today, yesterday, last year. And that type of forward strategic thinking and ability to assess risk and to march forward very, very, very carefully, but sometimes also very quickly, is something that we have recognized before entering into this partnership and have seen throughout. It is also something that we have seen as one of our local Main Street programs that I have seen in working with them, and well as 7 other communities. So I wanted to leave you with some of those other insights about Willmar downtown development, besides just an overview of the program that I coordinate. With that, I think we're available for questions.
Thank you. That was very, very interesting, very informative. Now, in the interest of time, if we have a few questions, we can do that. Otherwise, we'll move into the funding request. Questions from the council? Councilmember Johnson.
I'm curious about the math component of your analysis on projects that you support.
This math?
No, when you were looking at the criteria, that one that just flipped the other way. There, the last one. The sweet spot came together in Historic 313 on both the math working out and the missions of the 2 organizations being met.
The math would refer to the cost of the building, the cost of the rehab, and the ability of the building to cash flow long term in order to sustain viable businesses that were complementary to the existing businesses in downtown Willmar. And I should say that I am not our real estate coordinator. So while I work with Willmar Downtown Development on a variety of things, including this, our real estate coordinator is the one who crunches the actual numbers and looks at the pro forma and cash projections. However, I think John might be able to talk a little bit better about that than I do. But that's where it came together. If the building had been significantly more expensive, or if there had been different uses for it that were not as likely to succeed, I don't think we would have made that decision.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Well,
okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to pursue this with Mr. Christensen. Adding up the grants and then the other in-kind dollars and eliminating the in-kind dollars that weren't cash, and then looking at the mortgage debt, I got $496,430. And I'm wondering how the math works out on, I don't know exactly how many of those dollars have to be repaid, but I suspect, well, I could take out $30,000 for the HRA loan, because I think after 7 years, that's, if the project is alive and well, that's forgiven. Is that right?
That's correct. But if you look at the slide I had up that was related to the financing component, that's the portion that is what will need to get repaid. And that's the portion that's going to have monthly payment schedule on.
And those amounts were $256,000.
Yes, that's correct.
And I mean, I guess I'm curious to know is that would you have the $3,000 worth of income would be able to retire that debt?
The financing on that, I apologize. The financing on that, the project needs to be leased out, and then the project will cash flow the debt. Now, we had a substantial amount of grants that came into this project. You could look at as equity per se, that came in from partners in the project. But the project itself needs to cash flow associated with the debt that's there, because that debt is debt that needs to be repaid.
Yeah, but I guess I haven't seen your numbers as to how, I guess I'm...
Well, I guess, and part of the reason for us being here and laying this out is so that everybody does see the numbers and everybody does feel comfortable with it. And I think
I agree with you that this is not a good investment. If you look at it strictly from an investment point of view.
And it was done in a way that would be very difficult to do. If you were a private citizen, you wouldn't do it this way, or you wouldn't finance it this way.
Yeah, you said that at the beginning, and I appreciate that, and that's what I'm seeing here. But then when I started adding up the numbers, I mean, that's staggering, and
Right, and I think maybe what I would offer to do, and I know it's not part of the budget request and such, but we do have a business plan that's been updated now recently with the historic 313 building, and actually Jeff Madsen, consultant downtown, is the one who's prepared that business plan, and he couldn't be here this evening because he's actually meeting with legislators, state legislators from St. Paul, who are out this evening looking at the 313 building. And their interest in the project, interest in the concept, interest in what Wilmer is doing. And so that's where he is this evening, meeting with them. And I think the best thing would be to provide that business plan for the council, and so that you see it. It'd be information for you to see what's happening in the community and how this project is coming together.
If you could get that to Kevin, then
Yeah.
he'll get it distributed out to all
Yeah.
of us.
And that's the I guess the purpose of this is so that because you hear all kinds of things about Foxhole and Hub and things that are happening, is that just so everybody understands how this project is being laid out. Doing phase 1 is what's happening now, and then when phase 1 gets completed here, which we're at the point of being able to do, then are all working on phase 2, then that would come as a second phase.
I know I understand that, but I'm looking at, it looks to me, as close as I can tell, that there's probably over $200,000 in cash or that's gone in there already. And I guess I don't know, with all these grants and so on, how they're administered, and I'm curious to know if there were any fees paid for administration expenses or anything like that. I mean, what we're looking at here, John, is a question of need for your request for funds, and that's what I'm trying to get at, is how do I tell from what we're looking at here what the need is? That's just on this building. And
Right, and I guess first of all, the thing that the Wilmer Downtown Development, this was to show an example of one of the things that Wilmer Downtown Development is doing, a project that it's doing, working to help revitalize downtown. The Wilmer Downtown Development is not requesting the city participate in anything associated with the historic 313 building or the partnership that it's looking at now. Realize that we're going to need to pull this together, and is not requesting city funding for this project. What the Wilmer Downtown Development is requesting is requesting as far as the city to assist in the operating budget that we had submitted earlier.
Can we hold on that, John? I want to see if there's any other
Sure.
questions or comments on 313, then we'll get into your funding request. Were you done, Councilmember Johnson?
well, what I'm getting at is I'm trying to figure out how much money, there's a lot of money that's been gone into this building, for instance. It's one of their projects, I understand that, just one. But it would relate, I don't know if there was any money that went to cover some of their operating expenses, which is what our money goes for.
Okay, we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we get into funding. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
John, thank you for the good work you're doing down there in that building. 313 is an excellent addition to the downtown. You guys have a vision to where that building needs to go, what needs to happen there. And with those 5, potentially even more than that, businesses, potentially 9 from the numbers that you had in your report. This is a good addition to our downtown area, so thank you for your investment in our downtown and the preservation for you folks as well, to see the vision and see sometimes past what we see, but to actually see what something can be rather than what something can't be. So thank you for your vision, your leadership in making that happen. So good work to your board, yourselves, and making this project a positive project for Wilmer.
Okay, let's go into the funding request, if we can. Thank you, Emily.
Okay. Yes, thank you. And you did receive a packet regarding the Wilmer Downtown Development. The funding request is for $37,000, which is the same as it has been for the last 2 years, for 2014 and 2015. And when we look at the related to the funding request in a project like this, one of the things, some of the dollars that the Wilmer Downtown Development has raised on its own through its stakeholders downtown and other contributions associated with it is that from our downtown Wilmer Downtown Development budget, we're actually contributing dollars. So the Wilmer Downtown Development has contributed $37,000 into this project because of the need and at the timing of the project where it is. So none of the grants or the financing or any of the dollars associated with the 313 building impact the operations of come back into the Wilmer Downtown Development. Actually, it goes into the entity. Those loans are with the historic 313 building LLC. They're not with the downtown development. The grants go to have all been passed through to that LLC, just for clarification on that aspect of it. With the grant request, there's a budget request or a budget that the Wilmer Downtown Development provides the city as to what the budget items are that the $37,000 would be used for. The city has designated $5,000 of those dollars to be used for the Holidays Parade. I don't know who was able to be at the Holidays Parade on Saturday night. I thought it was a fun event. It turned out that it was a little bit magical when right during the parade it started to snow. And I don't know if you guys arranged that or how that happened, but I thought that was a nice touch associated with it. I would, I guess, entertain any questions associated with it. The downtown development, we have the same focus, the Holidays Parade, the Becker Market, the same projects we have. Of course, there's been a significant amount of effort and energy that's been put to the development of the historic 313 building, but that's something that we look at now as we do in addition to the other programs that the downtown development is trying to accomplish. Because of the time constraints, I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the information in the packet associated with that.
Questions from the council? Councilmember Johnson, did you get your question answered?
Well, I'm trying to answer, have a good feel for what the needs are, and I'm looking at the data here, the financial data we've got, and I'm having a little trouble being able to ascertain that. I just don't think there's enough information, for me anyways. We've got, when I look at a couple of the other people that are here requesting money tonight, we have, I think, far more complete information on their expenses, where the dollars went. And one question, I guess another question I had for John was on the Form 990 Easy, the federal tax form. It would look to me like you're on WDD's on a calendar year basis.
That is correct.
And we've got the 2013, and information indicates the 2014, there was an extension requested.
Yeah, we volunteered to prepare that form for the WDD. And part of the issue is because the WDD, Wilmer Downtown Development, is a partner in the historic 313 4th Street building, or LLC, that was a newly formed entity, and with the Preservation Alliance being the managing member on that, we need to get that LLC tax return prepared, and then that, essentially a K-1 will come to the Wilmer Downtown Development. Now, it's going to just reflect operating expenses, but we do need that K-1 form. So there was an extension requested until the Wilmer Downtown Development can get the tax return from the historic 313 building. And I don't anticipate, right now they're getting systems up and going as far as their accounting system, because it's a new entity, a new situation for them. I don't anticipate that needing an extension in the future.
Any other questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, in the interest of transparency, 2 years ago, Councilman Ahman made the motion to give $5,000 for the holidays, and we're all in favor of it, and you guys have had it for the last couple of years. I don't see any information in here on where that $5,000 went, and from what I have learned, the fees from the floats and the sponsors more than cover the cost of holidays, so that money is actually going somewhere else presently and in the last couple of years. It concerns me that we don't see where that money went here, because I really don't even see where the $37,000 went. I mean, there's no breakdown of it, 10 went here, 3 went there, 5 went there.
Well, if you,
I'm confused.
do you see the, in your packet, you should have an operating budget for, which is the total Wilmer Downtown Development, 2016, that's the projected operating budget. The next page over is a breakdown of the operating budget specifically for the city of Wilmer. That operating budget totals the $37,000, and that's the revenue on top. And then it shows each of the expense items listed below that are related to, is everybody able to find the?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We don't have it.
In the packet,
We didn't.
pardon?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we did not receive, what you have is what we received. We don't have a breakdown of that. We just have the total operating budget for 2016.
Okay, which is 80,500.
That's correct. That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, I apologize because as part of this is and this was requested a number, probably 5 years ago from the city, is what is our what is our budget items going to? And so we have a budget item that's a breakout of our main budget, which just relates to the $37,000 that the city has provided that the city has provided the Wilmer Downtown Development. And so as that budget is met, every month when we have expenses and we request from the city, we send the monthly request of what's being requested associated with that budget and each budget item, and then we send a copy of the invoice and a copy of the check associated with that expenditure each month. And then the Wilmer Downtown Development gets reimbursement. Now, we'll provide any information you'd like. I mean, I look at it as, our books are totally open to anybody that wants to look at them or go through them. I mean, I'd be happy to provide any information.
Could you give us some summary of that? It looks like it's like a page or less.
Oh, yeah, I mean.
Can you just kind of tell us where?
I apologize, because that was meant to be part of it. It's 30, the city budget request for 2016 is, the city of Wilmer budget is $32,000. The city of Wilmer holiday celebration was additional $5,000 for $37,000 total. The expenditures associated with that are related to the holiday celebration for $5,000, so it'd be expenses of $5,000 for the holiday celebration. There's liability insurance is part of that budget of $2,500. And that was, that's Board of Directors liability insurance, and that also includes event liability insurance. There was rent of $1,800 for storage space. There's a project coordinator contract for $21,600. Administrative services of $1,000. Marketing and advertising, mostly newspaper, radio of $3,500, and grant writer fees of $1,600 for $32,000 total, plus the $5,000 project cost. But those expenses are, and it's that budget along with every time there's a request for funds, the invoice of what's being paid, the check that's being paid is attached with a copy of that for to the city, and if they have questions on that, they call us. And the reason I know is that our office provides that information to the city, and then they do the reimbursement. The city's been, the administration's been very good to work with. And they've had good questions, and so they've been done an excellent job.
Okay, I'm wondering, Steve, you get that And we could have that just included as information in the Finance Committee minutes?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Anderson, we do get that. It goes to the administrator's office for approval. They sign off on it and then send it to the finance office for processing. We can include any information.
But I think we can talk about what we want to do, but I'm hearing that we want to see that.
It is always listed in the council's list of bills when they are paid as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm disappointed that we don't have that compilation here of the monthly or weekly bills that come through our packet. I mean, John, that should be part of this presentation. Exactly where all those dollars go. I mean, I don't understand why it's pretty simple to do.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, are you asking, would you like the compilation or the list of checks that we wrote during the year?
No.
No.
Well, you could do that in a form, but
sure.
Just where that $37,000 goes. I mean, you mentioned the holidays thing, and in your report in here, it shows that there was $3,400 expenses for holidays, and that's it. And you mentioned that there was $2,500 for liability and $1,800 for something else, and that doesn't add up. I mean, again, we're spending taxpayers' dollars, and we need to be accountable.
Well,
and I don't know why we weren't given the summary that you have there.
Well,
I'm
just
lost.
as, and I apologize as far as when you look at, you're talking about the city of Wilmer summary, and I apologize for that. It's this, actually the numbers are exactly the same as they were in 2015. And this is the same summary that we had in 2015 because the budget request is exactly the same. But as far as transparency or detail or things of that nature, I mean, that's something that we do have, and that's something that we do provide, and that's something that the city does get. And if the city had requested, I could easily have had a list and a stack of all of those invoices and brought them with. I'd be happy to, that's not a problem.
But we're not asking for that. I just, where's the $37,000 going? Just, where is it? Again, don't get me wrong. What you guys are doing is great. I don't question that one bit. However, it's pretty easy to put down the number and then where those dollars go. I mean, is 20,000 going for a coordinator somewhere, or is 5,000 going for whatever? We don't know where it's going, folks. We don't. And can anybody
I guess that's where I would beg to differ, because I think that the city does know where it's going. I mean, like I said, when you get a copy of every invoice before you make a payment to the Wilmer Downtown Development. The only reason I'm sure of that is because we do that. Our office does that.
But for me to go back and look over 12 months of council financial statements, when it could be done in just, one sheet of paper, is just...
And this is...
Okay, I think we hear what we're saying. It was a mistake. It wasn't put in. He summarized it as best he could. Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can put the blame on me. I'm the liaison to them. I started in January, and I get that information every meeting. And I was told that it goes to the city because they don't, the design center doesn't get paid unless they submit a bill to the city. So I get it. If you want me to give it to you the day after the meeting, I can do that. But
it just needs to be given once a year, and that's now.
Well, the city has it, but I guess no one has really requested it before. We give them $32,000 plus $5,000 for the parade. And they don't make much money on the parade. I think last year they made $200, $229 or something like that. And it goes back into their budget, so.
Good question.
Next year will be different then.
Councilmember Nelson.
Could you just go back and address, we have the operating budget that has a total of, your budget projection is $80,500, of which you're asking the city to contribute $32,000. The expenses are laid out there for the entire $80,500. So, I mean, you can walk through and show, I mean, we're paying a portion of those things. So I guess I'm not really sure what we're questioning here, or if we're questioning for the right reasons.
Anyone else? Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, John, what I'm questioning, or where my questions go to, is why I was looking at the historic 313 revenue flow and whatever, is the need basis. I can see that on these other applicants, you know, what we're paying for, like West Central Industries, where we pay for the Meals on Wheels. That, you know, they show that what it costs them and what they need to sustain it and how they come out total. So I know what they're doing. What my question goes to here is, I guess I don't really care what all the individual expenses are, so much as what's the need. I don't know how much money is going through Wilmer Downtown Development, because there's all these grants, and apparently if you're allocating those all to Historic 313, but that's some of the work that your staff has been doing or that WDD's been doing. So it's like, you know, what kind of revenue did that, you know, did that generate revenue into WDD's coffers, and how much? So I know whether or not, I can't see it, so I don't know.
No, that's a very good question. That's a very good question, and I maybe failed to mention something about the relationship of the partnership. We have this LLC entity that was created for the development of this facility to spur economic development. Preservation Alliance of Minnesota was able to come in, and they had the money, and so they were able to put in $65,000 to purchase the building. The Wilmer Downtown Development did not have money, and so part of their responsibility is to be the operations, to be the boots on the ground, so to speak, because we're also in Wilmer. And so it's the volunteer board and the project coordinator are the ones that are responsible for getting this project together, so to speak, okay? And that comes down to applying for those grants, receiving those grants, getting the financing pulled together, getting strategic partners to come in and align. That's a responsibility of the Wilmer Downtown Development. So that's a use of resource, and the board made the decision that that is a good use of resource. That's part of what the mission is, to restore downtown, renew the heart of the city. And so that was part of the mission associated with the downtown development. So we're using resources for the development of that project. Now, a lot of them aren't cash out of it. We've had some contributions that have gone to it. But that's kind of that relationship where Pam is in St. Paul. We are essentially in the, boots on the ground, so to speak, helping with the development.
Yeah. I mean, the best analogy I could make, it would be like if I had a child that was college age and she was going to go off to Stanford University, and I wanted to apply for a scholarship or a student loan of some kind from the school, I'd have to submit my income, my tax returns, stuff like that, showing, what my needs were, and from there they would determine, if you qualify for a loan based on need, they're going to look at my finances, and they can tell that by looking at it. You see what I'm saying? I don't know where.
Okay.
Because I see that most of our money apparently goes to pay. It looks like the biggest expense on here is a $21,000 for or rounded off for the project coordinator. So that's where the biggest chunk of some of the money goes.
And that's on the.
And that would be a need basis along with the other expenses. But I'm not knowing what's going on with.
So if you look at the $80,500 associated that it's on the budget, and does everybody have that in front of them? Yep. The budget for the year. Yep. And you look at the part that is, there's $37,000 of that $80,000 that is essentially the need for the city assistance. And if you go down, you see $5,000 on that for expenses, which would be for holidays. That's about just above the middle of the page. You would go down a little bit further, $2,500 of the $4,900 of advertising would come out of, would be part of the city budget. The liability insurance of $2,500 would be part of that. The rent of $1,800 would be part of the city budget. The project coordinator of $21,600 and the administrative services of $1,000 would be part of what is being requested of the city. That's the need associated with it, and quite frankly, looking at pursuing the goals of the organization is associated with renewing the heart of the city and doing projects like 313. And that's what the Willmar Downtown Development wants to continue doing, spurring economic development. We think that those are dollars that, as an organization, we're putting into are a good investment that are going to return investment back to the city, back to the community.
Okay. I would just comment that we're getting increasingly more information and data. Maybe it's still not as refined as what it needs to be, but I think about this compared to what we got 4 or 5 years ago, and we have mounds of paper. In the interest of moving this along, I'll introduce a resolution to fund the Willmar Downtown Development Incorporated at the amount of $37,000.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to fund the Willmar Downtown Development amount of $37,000. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
I will abstain. Insufficient information for me.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Abstain.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 2 abstentions.
The resolution does pass. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the good stuff you do. And I will make sure that staff has that included in the report next year. So
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everything that you do as a city council and administration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Wilmerfest. Steve, if you'll make notice that Wilmerfest next year will go first before any of the other reports.
And I would add, Mr. Mayor, they were the first people here, too.
Sorry, I wasn't here. I didn't realize that.
Mr. Mayor,
if you want to blame somebody, you
duly
can blame
noted.
myself. So.
Duly noted.
Fair play.
Mayor Calvin and council members, thanks for having us this evening. I've submitted our budget and our past expenses. I'm going to make this short. We are requesting $35,000. We are a volunteer group. No one gets paid. We spend many hours volunteering our time to put on the festival in the summer. We feel we bring a lot of people into the community, and it is a great event for our community and for surrounding people to come and visit. Our ambassadors visit many, many cities during the year. Mayor Calvin has been with us on some of those. Our girls have represented us very well. We're well known in the communities around us for what we do. Just this past Saturday, I was not here. I was out of town with family, but we were part of the holidays and brought several groups in for the holidays parade and did an event with those people also. Damon Jungblood is with me. He's our community coordinator, handles a lot of the things. Some of the money that we are asking for this year is to continue a couple of things that we started new this past year that were a big hit, and they were the Kids Carnival on Saturday afternoon out at Robbins Island and the Rib Fest. We would like to, again, try and do that, along with all of our the parade, the coronation events, the ambassador events that happen during the year, the block party we've been a part of, and I guess that's what we are asking for, and I would entertain any questions or comments. And I thank you for your past and continued support. For many of you who have attended events, and Mayor Calvin has been with us on some things and judged the Rib Fest this past year and different things that we did get involved with. So I thank you for your participation in our event also. And you can put your request in with Damon for the front spot in the parade if
Did you turn it back to me?
I'm sorry, yes, Councilmember
Oh, okay.
Anderson. I'm sorry.
Councilmember Johnson.
I didn't know where we were for a minute.
I didn't know either. I was
I
lost.
forgot. I forgot to pass it to
I
you.
just want to thank you for everything you do. You do an excellent job of organizing it. Everybody works real hard, and you're all volunteer. And your application and the financial information you give us couldn't be more complete. We get your current tax returns, which I see were filed on time, and the additional information you give us is extremely helpful, and like I say, couldn't be more full, and it demonstrates you did a lot of work on that too. So I appreciate your attention to detail, which you also show in the events that you organize and sponsor. And again, thank you for doing an excellent job.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move to approve the $35,000 request from Wilmerfest.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion from
Councilmember Plowman and I are just wondering, how do we become the rib tasters next year?
Run for mayor.
We have a motion and a second. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. You have a question?
I'd like to make a comment before you
Oh,
turn
go
it back
ahead.
to me. The work you guys do, as already been stated, is phenomenal. When I was down in Minneapolis, I guess, with you guys, a number of the other ambassadors came up to me and talked about how well your project is run. So that goes to you, the leaders of the organization, for Wilmerfest, for the good work you do. The ambassadors we have, the 3 ambassadors we have this year, are fabulous. And on Saturday night, they were there at the parade. When the snow started, they were encouraging everybody and cheering everybody, and of course you guys were there as well. So again, I just want to re-apologize to you for holding you here this long, but it won't happen next year. With that, additional discussion on the motion. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a quick clarification, not questioning it. You asked for an additional $10,000 this year. I know you added a couple of events. Is that strictly to cover the costs? I do see you ended up, I think, in the negative a little bit this year. So I'm just curious of if you're expecting other changes, or will this $10,000 just help you to be able to do that?
Right. The additional $10,000 should help us get everything, like I said, with the new events, and we did spend some extra money with those new events. We did have a sponsor help us with one of those events, and they are again going to do that this year. But to help offset some of those shortages that we had this past year, we've had some monies carried forward, which helped us, but we did ask for the additional 10 to help offset and keep going on some of these things that we've tried to do new. We've tried to add new things each year, and that's what happened last year. Is we added a couple new things and spent a little extra money. So.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meske.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
The resolution passes. Thank you for your hard work. So,
Thank you.
next, Councilmember Anderson, additional discussion on the Wilmer City budget.
Okay, I think what we need to do now is get a little bit of an accounting from our finance director as to where we are in the grand scheme of things. You know, we've made some changes. We didn't make any changes today. I'd like to find out where we are to date and what our surplus might be, and then maybe some ideas and discussion on where that might go.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Anderson, I've prepared a summation of the actions that have been taken to date. I see that the formatting did not carry through as I thought it would here on the screen there. But on August 31st, Mayor Calvin presented a balanced budget to the council. The council took that balanced budget and held a meeting on September 14th where they reviewed the capital improvements. They had the adjustments that you see there. Of the fire truck, they reduced by $250,000. The fire extraction equipment was reduced by $35,000. The airport by $126,500. If you could go to the next page. Information technology was reduced by 30,000. And again, I apologize for the format. You should have the disc there. It should all be on one page. For a total reduction of $441,500. On October 12th, you then held another meeting where you reviewed with the departmental budgets and had some additional adjustments where you reduced the gas franchise fee, which was a revenue reduction of $250,000. You reduced police rents because there was a typographical error. That reduced it by $42,347. There we have it. And you increased the leisure services part-time wages by $2,500, dealing with the auditorium, I believe was the discussion at the time. For an additional, additional revenues of $210,153. The net result of that becomes the changes that you made both on the capital and the operating budgets netted $231,347 of additional funds that are available for appropriations with all those reductions. The lost, we have since been notified from the Department of Revenue of some potential lost reimbursements. The committee has talked about that, $159,000. There's been no official action on that. Staff's recommendation would be that you possibly take action, leaving a net amount of $72,347. The action that you took tonight of appropriating $5,000 additional would reduce that to $67,347 of available funds that need to be appropriated or revenues reduced to balance the budget. The Truth and Taxation hearing will be held on December 7th. The action that comes after that hearing would be to set the levy. The levy at this point is $4,451,028, as was discussed in your previous meetings. $397,000 of that has been designated for pavement management. The total budget at this point is $34.7 million.
Okay, thank you for that summary. The $159,000, if you all remember, we suggested that get put back in there so that this is money that was paid by some individual or business or businesses that they shouldn't have paid, and in the audit, the state picked that up. So we're going to have to pay that back. So I think it only makes sense that we make some sort of provision for how we want to handle that return of that money sometime in 2016. So when you take that out of everything else that we did, it does leave us the $67,347 surplus, and we need to talk about what we should do with that. It's not the amount of money that some of us thought it was going to be, hoped it was going to be. I think one of the options that I'd like us to consider on that is put it in a facilities fund or whatever we want to call it. We haven't gotten the facilities report back yet, but I suspect that there's going to be probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential expenses there. So that's I'd like us to consider that. And I don't know, maybe the council has some other ideas, and we can kick that around a little bit, and then I think we'll have to take some action here tonight as to what we want to do. So does anybody have any other thoughts on the $67,000?
I'll take it.
Yeah, dividing it amongst us and the staff is not an option.
Can I comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is really awkward when I'm sitting here and I've got
That's
one
okay.
person to my
I'm
right.
used to
I'm
it.
sorry.
That's all right.
Councilmember Nelson.
I'm fine. I think putting it in the building is a great opportunity. I think we can move it if we need to at another point in time, but it might be a good place just to provide a holding until we have an option to do that. So I would encourage that. Do you want a motion for that, or?
I think we'll make a motion to do both items.
Okay. Go for it.
Kevin, put stop sign.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I really, because it's such a small amount of money, I'd recommend listening to our citizens first on December 7th, and then taking action. They might come up with some ideas, and we do get complaints that the council never seems to listen to the citizens, and I would really like to not take really any action until that hearing is concluded.
Till
That's what
after-
the advertising is out there for.
Okay, I guess I would ask then that we at least have some sort of a motion prepared that we can modify based on citizen input. Do we want to do something on the 159? Or do you think it should all be just one motion at that time?
That would be immaterial, because I think there's consensus there that we must pay that back, and this is
Yeah.
a good time to do that. But the other amount of money could be there for some great suggestions.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we allocate $159,000 of our surplus toward the liability that will be incurred for the sales tax refund.
Second.
There's been a motion made and seconded to take the unappropriated funds to pay back the local option sales tax obligation in 2016. Discussion. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a deadline on this? I mean, did they say we got to have it by April 15th, and do we know that that's the amount?
No, we don't know that that's the amount yet, but that's what we feel the amount is going to be. And when that invoice comes to us, we'll have to pay it. And we'll have a reasonable amount of time to pay it. But if we have it funded through this year's budget, then we'll have it covered. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a clarification when we do that open meeting. So if there's a citizen or a group that would like to request funding, they still have the right to do that, and we would consider it at that time?
For funding for themselves, or ask the council to dedicate it to a common cause that a variety of citizens? Yes, you would. The only action you no longer have is to raise the levy. You took that action before September 15th. So where to spend the final amount of budget is at your discretion after hearing the public testimony.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the action at the December 7th Truth and Taxation meeting is basically twofold. One is to set the levy, which after that point can't be changed. It can be lowered at that meeting, but can't be raised. The second would be to set the budget at the estimated amount, which can be revised at any time during the year or thereafter. It's the levy is the only action that's permanent after the public hearing.
All in favor of the roll call? I'm sorry, is it simple motion?
It can be a standard motion. There's none.
Right, we're not spending the money yet, right, correct, okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion does carry. Next, good work, Councilmember Anderson, for getting the budget all put together, and your committee for the work that you've done as well. So thank you for all the work that you've done on that. So next on the agenda, we have the City Administrator Employment Agreement. So Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. You have presumably before you on your devices a copy of the proposed contract with the candidate for city administrator that you decided to offer the position to. It is a very similar draft to the proposed contract I sent before your previous meeting last Monday. I have been in touch. There were some questions raised before the previous meeting about if this contract was drafted correctly in light of your ongoing deliberations about setting workplace policies for benefits and terms and conditions of employment for non-union employees. So I spent the last week, I've talked with your labor attorney, Frank Madden, several times, and I'm confident that he's communicated to me that he's comfortable with the contract, does not see it being an issue for any of the matters that he's representing the city on. Presumably, you've all had an opportunity to look at the terms of the contract. I guess the question for you then is, are you able to approve the contract based on those terms? There's no legal or procedural reason that you can't act on it tonight.
Okay, and then you were in conversation with Mr. Madden today, is that correct?
He did. He called me shortly before I left the office.
And so he sees no problem with us, in the conversation you had with him today, there's no problem with us dealing with this employment agreement today. It won't jeopardize any of the negotiations that we're having either with represented groups or non-represented groups, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Council, what do you wish to do? Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Ahmed and I were in contact with Mr. Madden on Friday, and he sent me an email this morning. He advised us, by the way, we're having a labor meeting on December 1st, which is a Tuesday. The Public Safety Committee meeting is canceled. He will be here because he's going to be negotiating the next day. And he stated to Mr. Ahmed and myself that it would be in our it would be advantageous to us to discuss this contract at that closed meeting on Tuesday, December 1st, as it has he said it has a large effect on our efforts with contracts that we're trying to finish up before the end of the year, including department heads, non-union and union employees. So I would move that we deal with this contract on December 1st in that closed meeting.
There's a motion to delay the meeting, the decision to the closed meeting. The legalities of that, Attorney Scott, can we discuss this in closed session? I don't believe that's legal to do.
Only to the extent that the city administrator contract would have a bearing on your negotiations with represented bargaining units. And, you know, Mr. Madden contacted me today. I didn't call him first, but there's a question apparently about what exactly he communicated to a couple council members on Friday. I had spoken with him Friday morning. Obviously, I can't speak to what was said in those conversations, but I can tell you that I talked to him this afternoon. He was clear with me that he has no problem with the council acting on the contract tonight. He did mention that he had discussed the possibility that he could answer some questions about the agreement in your upcoming closed session to discuss labor negotiation strategies, but that it would be limited only to questions that really had a relevance to your ongoing negotiations with bargaining units, because you can't close a meeting to talk about an employment contract with an individual employee. So I'm communicating to you. Had the labor attorney raised objections to this contract being considered, I would absolutely defer to his advice. I would defer to his advice in any event when it deals with matters pertaining to his representation of the city. In this case, though, he was very clear with me that he was not recommending that the council delay this. Certainly the council can delay it if it so chooses. If for some reason the council isn't ready to take action, it can table the contract tonight. You don't have to vote. But there's no legal reason or procedural reason that you have to do that or are recommended to do that.
And we could not legally discuss the contract in closed session, the content of the contract in closed session, correct?
And again, only to the extent it had some relevance to your negotiations. You know, if there were.
But with a bargaining group, not the
bargaining,
non-represented.
yes, with your labor negotiations with represented bargaining groups.
And this employment agreement reflects a non-represented group, not a represented group. Is that correct?
Oh, it's an individual, non-represented employee.
Individual.
Correct. Is there a second to the motion? It appears to me that the hearing from our attorney, that we legally can't do what's being recommended by Councilmember Christensen. Is there a second to the motion? Motion dies for fail of a second. Council, what do you wish to do with this employment agreement? Councilmember Johnson.
Well, I don't know what everybody else's impression was, but mine was that the consultant, Mr. I think it's pronounced
Wires. Or Wires? Wires.
I believe so. I get it right?
Dave or Gary?
Mr. Wires indicated, that, or my understanding was he would engage in some negotiations with the candidate we selected and come back to us and present where he was. And which would have been basically what happened when we last used a consultant to find a city administrator for us, which at that time was Springstead. That's what they did for us and came back to us, and this is what they want. What's your response? This time, that I was expecting that again, but when it came back, it was like, here's the contract. You know, and that bothered me. So I guess I would, and I don't have a problem with discussing it here. We're all, you know, here, have an open meeting, but, and I guess since I've got the floor, I would point out that I didn't like the information I had was that the candidate was making approximately $106,000 where he is now, and how we got to $129,000 as the offer I think that's a little high. And then in addition, it has a 3% cost of living escalator, an automatic, put in there for 6 months after the official date of hiring. So, and that kind of bothered me. I mean, I just think that's a little bit high when I look at what information we had on other cities. That's all. And I think maybe, you know, I don't know if some additional negotiation should be done on that issue or not, but that's just say my opinion.
So the two issues that you're raising, or the discussion points for you, is the 3% and the 129,000 salary.
Those are two, and you can go on. There's some more questions, and
Right.
if I have any more, I'll come back. I've got a couple. I got to look at my
Councilmember Anderson.
My impression, recollection, version of what happened that afternoon or late morning, I forget what it was, when we decided that we wanted to do this, was that we basically empowered or delegated, or whatever is the word, to our representative to negotiate the deal. I can remember that the mayor asked, does anyone have any concerns about the contract? Councilmember Christensen had some wording concerns that were taken into account, and we talked about that. And then I believe the mayor asked again, are there any other concerns or issues? I know he questioned whether he needed a motion on it. I can remember that, but we didn't. So I feel that we delegated the authority to Mr. Weirs to negotiate the contract. And we said, if you get it done, and you can get it done by noon on Monday, we're good. We can approve it at the council meeting that night. So I feel an ethical obligation that we're just following up on what we empowered that individual to do. I didn't interpret it that he would come back with a proposal or anything like that. It was get the deal done and let's move forward. So I have a slightly different interpretation of what we did that afternoon.
Councilmember Nelson.
Just to add to what Councilmember Anderson said, I agree with what he said. I think part of the instructions was also to work with our city attorney in negotiating that contract. And I believe that's what took place. And so I would hope that we would move forward on this tonight with the documents that we have in place.
Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I felt like the council left out on any negotiations with the contract, very similar to what Mr. Johnson has stated. My understanding was we would be emailed that contract during the weekend and approve it or call him with any questions we would have. I asked for and got his contract in Thief River Falls, got it emailed to me from a council person up there. And along with how she stated he was hired up there, and it was exactly like Mr. Johnson said. Sprinks that did the hiring of him up there. They negotiated with him, brought it back to the Labor Committee, and the Labor Committee renegotiated and said, we're going to offer this, 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 and then he accepted that. That never happened here. And then when you're doing a contract like this, the council's hiring this administrator. It isn't Mr. Weir's. We're hiring him, and it should be under our terms. I felt like we were left out. I mean, we needed to see that thing and talk about it. And you can do that in private. I mean, that's what, at least that's what Mr. Madden had told us on Friday. But he did express to Steve and I that we should talk about this as it pertains to the contracts that he's presently looking at us for, including department heads, non-union, and union employees. He's dealing with all of them, and it'll be I believe, Wednesday after we meet in the closed session. And he said it has an effect on those contracts. Some may look at that and say, hey, I think we should be eligible for that, or that part of that contract. I mean, and we had no say. I don't like how this came about at all. I think that we should discuss it how it affects our other contracts. And I don't know why we would do something like this. Just doesn't make sense to have someone else negotiate to give you the contract and you sign it with no say in it. This doesn't make sense to me. In the interest of our constituents, they expect us to do some negotiating with this.
Councilmember Anderson.
You know, I will disclose that I talked to Mr. Madden this morning and essentially got the same wording that the city attorney got, that he was not advocating going to a closed session. He didn't have serious concerns with it. So I think that issue is behind us. We didn't get a second on the motion anyway, so that motion is behind it. But I feel strongly that we have a moral obligation. We empowered this man to do work for us. Was that right? You know, I don't know. But that's what we did. So I think we have to live with it.
Councilmember Plowman.
I understand. I'm trying to see all sides of this forest of trees, and I get it, because I too feel like it came back and like maybe the terms were a little bit rich. Okay, fine. But the problem I think that we're finding ourselves with is now we wish that we would have outlined terms with our consultant a little bit differently. We had the opportunity to do that, and we didn't do it. So now it's incumbent on us to go forward with what we got. At least I feel like ethically that's probably the right thing to do. That's my opinion.
Council, are you ready to make a motion?
I am.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'd move acceptance of the employment agreement as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the employment agreement. Councilmember Johnson. Oh, I thought did you have a comment?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Okay.
And I can make a comment. Thank you. I'll take advantage of your generosity.
I thought I heard somebody over here say something, so I was just.
I was very silent. There was a couple other things, but I mean, I'm not trying to institute an argument here. And if Mr. Madden is comfortable, that was a concern the concern that our council member Christensen stated, I thought was valid. But if there's been conversations since then that indicate that our labor attorney, Mr. Madden, is okay with it, then I guess, and if it's the basic consensus of the council, I guess I don't have a problem with taking a vote on this tonight and move on. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Scott.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I could make one recommendation to the form of the motion, that it be slightly amended to be consistent with the language in your charter. Not only would you be approving the employment agreement, but you'd be appointing Mr. Cruz as your city administrator.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I know.
We knew that.
I'm good with that.
Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
No.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meskey.
Abstain.
Bauman.
Aye.
Johnson.
I'll abstain on this one.
Mr. Mayor?
Motion fails for lack of 5. It is 4 ayes, 1 nay, 2 abstention.
The mayor has the option of voting in this position with 4 people voting affirmative. The mayor will vote in affirmative as well to call Mr. Cruz as our next city administrator. Anything else for the good of the order?
Mr. Accounting.
Okay, that's true.
2,
That's good.
3, 4.
It was 4-1-2, correct?
So it passed.
Be 5-3.
Takes
Need 5 votes.
Takes 5 votes.
5. So 4-1, my report of 4-1-2 is correct, and it didn't pass at that point.
Right, so the mayor does cast an affirmative vote to call Mr. Cruz.
Allen's not here.
I get it.
Where are we? You cast an affirmative vote?
Correct. In the event of a 4-1-2 vote, the mayor can cast the vote to make it 5 votes because it takes 5 votes to call the person. It takes 5 votes of the council to call the person.
Okay. So we passed it.
Is that correct, Mr. Scott?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's 2 steps to this analysis. The first is when you're appointing a city administrator, charter states clearly it's a council appointment, and you need 5 council members to vote in favor of the appointment. There's then the section that details when the mayor may vote. The mayor may vote in limited instances, and it states that if any appointment to be made by the council fails by 1 vote to make the required number for appointment, the mayor is authorized to vote for the appointment, which is what I understand just happened.
Mayor, Council.
Councilmember Meskey.
Thank you. The reason I abstained is I really wasn't part of the negotiation process. And listening, Councilman Christensen makes an excellent point that, we probably should have looked at that. And I'm sitting here and I have the luxury of saying, I wasn't able to make that determination at that time that we should have done that. And so for me, I was thinking, should I not be part of that or not? And so if it creates the dilemma that it does, I would change my vote from an abstention to an aye.
Mr. Scott?
The vote's been cast, and I think actually at this point it's occurred.
Yes.
I don't think you even need to go back and revisit particular votes.
Can't change your vote once it's been announced.
Yep. I'd move to approve the contract for the city administrator.
We're not going to.
There's a motion been made, is there a second to the?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the contract to call the city administrator. Roll call.
Excuse me, to call?
Or to, I'm sorry, to hire the city administrator. Is that, get my wording correct.
Mayor, perhaps I wasn't clear enough when I had recommended change to the motion. But my intent, and I don't remember what I said specifically, my intent was that you would simply make the motion to approve the contract and make the appointment. So I had understood that you had taken this vote already. But if that was not the movers and the council's understanding, by all means, you should.
I think the motion on the floor now is to restate the motion so that the person who abstained would have the ability to vote.
I didn't have to go to the book on this, but.
You're not changing the outcome of the vote.
Motion to reconsider, wouldn't it?
That's what it is.
It's a motion to reconsider, right?
It's a vote to
Yep.
reconsider, yeah.
Well, that's.
That's in there.
Yep, oh, that's true.
Yep.
That's true.
Yep.
Okay. parliamentary procedure. I would make a motion to reconsider the previous vote.
Second.
It's been made, well, let's make sure we're doing it right this time.
I know what's in there, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
It's in there. It's in there. Page 149 or something. I don't remember.
It requires a second. It's debatable. It's not amendable. We're on target.
Okay, there's been a motion and there's been second. All those in, well, roll call.
Councilmember Christensen.
Abstain.
Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Abstain.
Fagerly.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 2 abstention. Motion passes to reconsider.
Any other business come before the council?
Wait,
No,
we get it.
We're reconsidering it.
No, we have to reconsider.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do a roll call vote on that. It's okay.
He can call, though. He can call when he wants.
Okay, so now a motion to reconsider.
So essentially, Mayor, members of the council,
Negated.
what just happened is you have now restored the main motion. The motion has, you have voted to reconsider it, which means it's back before you. So the motion has made.
So does the motion stand as it's made and seconded?
The motion is now before you again as if it were made for the
We
first
vote.
time. So you now have before you a motion
You
to,
erase the slate, sir.
you have a motion before you currently that has been seconded to approve the employment contract with Mr. Cruz and appoint him city administrator.
Roll call.
There's no motion, sir.
No, there is.
Oh,
It does. I think it restores the motion. You are reconsidering it. You're voting again on that same motion.
Uh-huh.
Well, I hope this is all kosher.
I'm not sure it's that or it takes it completely off the slate.
I can too.
Left it the year later.
Go home. It's going to go. However, I don't know if we can do it immediately.
Bottom of page 41.
Books out.
Okay.
I've read that portion.
I get motion to adjourn. Fooling around. Jesus. Crazy.
For being unanimous.
It didn't matter, but you wanted to change your vote.
At the time,
When's the pizza get here?
Ronnie said.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said.
Got to order pizza from there.
Okay. It's a Friday.
Roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Meskey.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Johnson.
Abstain.
Fagerly.
Aye.
Christensen.
Abstain.
5 ayes, 0 nays, 2 abstentions.
So the motion passes. Anything else for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
Motion been made and seconded. We are adjourned.